spot, bringing stats like a kingpin. MMA knowledge needs his nephews all lean in, breaking down fights, codes, Fat Daddy Supreme. On Just a Tip show, he's cooking up a dream. Uncle Weezy, he the man, dropping fight facts, got it all on hand. He the stat attack grand, MMA guru, more than just a fan. Wanna know the numbers? Weezy got them cataloged, from the fighters reach down to how many times they dog. Just a Tip living, breaking it down slick, hit you with the knowledge, won't miss a single trick. Uncle Weezy, he the man, dropping fight facts, got it all on hand. He the stat attack grand, MMA guru, more than just a fan. Balls deep predictions, he be making those calls, getting in the details, opponents feeling small. From jabs to takedowns, got the whole fight ID. Uncle Weezy spitting truth, no lie, keep it G. Blow the horn, blow the horn. Stat Daddy Weezy not showing no scorn. Fight Night Kingdom, he wearing the crown. Break it down for the peeps, never looking like a clown.
Oh, yes. What's going on, everybody? It is Wednesday evening. We're a little bit late with the full card breakdown this week, but there's a lot of research to do this week. I mean, we got 12 fights on this UFC 307 card that's going to be headlined by Alex Pereira and Khalil Rountree Jr. But what we also have on this card, because it's a pay-per-view card, is a lot of veterans with 5-round fights. There was a ton of tape to watch on these fights. But look, we did all the work. We've put in the research. I've got my fight write-ups ready to go. As of right now, I think we're at about 79 pages here, 79. So we've got our work cut out for us tonight. I'm going to share my screen with you guys here, and let's do that. So we got the stats up here. I was going to go by my Bet MMA tips here. And let me log in and talk about last week. Last week, we finished up just a little bit. 0.22 units. We hit on both of our money line bets. Daniel Barres at minus 125. Got reverse CLV'd there, but still made 1 unit on that. Chris Duncan was my most confident dog of the week. Got him at plus 165. For 1.5 units. We cashed almost 2.5 units there. So up 3.47 units on money line bets. The prop bets didn't go our way. Look, Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week was Benoit Saint-Denis to shave the ass of Renato Moicano, and Moicano went into enemy territory and Dick sawed him. It wasn't even close. So the doctor stopped the fight after the second round. We got shaved there. We lost 1.5 units on the round 1-2 props there, which I thought was Saint-Denis' best path to victory. The guy fights like, his hair is on fire, so he gets you out of there early, or he probably isn't going to win. So took him by his best win condition. That one didn't work out. Had the under 2.5 rounds for Barres Altamirano. That was a good bet. I felt like, there were 4 knockdowns in that fight, but only 1 got credited, which was wild. But Barres was close on a submission attempt. We had Barres get a knockdown in the first round. Barres get a knockdown at the end of the fight. Definitely a high-action fight for a flyweight fight, but betting unders in the year 2024 after the glove switch has been a very, very unprofitable proposition. We had the fight doesn't start round 2 for Matt Frevola versus Fares Ziam. Plus 330 for a half unit. Loved the bet. That was exactly the kind of fight I expected it to be. It just took to the third round for Ziam to find the finish there. Good value there. That was a trifecta bet on the template, and I thought stylistically it lined up well. These are the kind of shots that I want to take more of going forward. Did not work out. And then we nailed it, really. I mean, I had Aylin Perez to win by KO in rounds 1 or 2. Her submission game has always looked awful, and I kind of felt like she was going to win the fight and win it early in rounds 1 or 2 with ground and pound, but she got the submission. I mean, Daria Zalesniakova's ground game is that bad. So if Aylin Perez is submitting you, it's time to get some help. But if she would have won that fight by knockout instead, that would have been a big win, because I think that was like a plus 700 that I had for a quarter unit there. It would have been like a 2-unit swing. We would have been up a little bit more than 2 units, but I got greedy, and instead of playing like the 900 and the 1100, I played the 1300 and the 1500 and lost the bet because I got greedy and went KO instead of just going for the straight round prop. So even though we were 12-2 on our picks last week, which was really good, finishing the top 20 on Tapology again. I finished twice in first place since I started changing my methodology for breaking down fights. And here we are, another week in the top 20 in Tapology. Phenomenal week. We're really killing it with the fight picks, you guys. And I've just got to trust my reads a little bit more and get my bets up a little more high volume. There's not a lot sticking out this week, but the work has been put in. The research is done. Now it's time for you guys to benefit from it. So I'm going to get my stats up here on the screen, and we're going to start with the first fight of the night, which is going to be Court McGee at plus 165, going up against Tim the Dirty Bird Means at minus 190. The fight doesn't go to decision here. A bet that I like at plus 125 for this week. I got a beverage here, you guys. It is the Hop Butcher, what is it called? The Windbreaker. And it is a, I just realized when I brought it home that it is a triple IPA with 10.5% alcohol by volume. I thought it was a double with 7.5%. Didn't look closely enough at the can, but freshly squeezed orange, zesty lime, and tropical melange are the tasting notes here. We got a fat 16-ounce beer with a 10.5% alcohol content. So looks like your Uncle Weezy is going to be getting fucked up while he breaks down these fights with you guys tonight. So here's to all the Patreon members. Here's to all the people that support the work. Here's to all the people that keep your Uncle Weezy getting up in the morning and taking care of business, handicapping these fights. Appreciate all of you guys. All right. Write-up time. The write-ups are available right now on the Patreon and the Dub Club, so you can check them out. You can read along with us here on the show. But summary of recent trends, the recency bias, the market accuracy of the money lines here. Let's start talking about Court McGee. 39 years old, 21 wins, 13 losses as a pro, and he's 7 wins and 10 losses in the UFC since the year 2013. Court is currently on a 3-fight losing streak, and he's coming off a unanimous decision loss to Alex Morono, and he was a plus 285 underdog in that fight. Prior to that, he was knocked out in the first round by Matt Brown, and he was a minus 225 favorite in that spot. And before that, he was knocked out in the first round by Jeremiah Wells, and that fight was a pick'em. So prior to the Wells fight, Court was on a 2-fight winning streak. He strung together a unanimous decision win over Claudio Silva as a pick'em and Ramiz Brahimaj as a plus 105 underdog. Court has looked terrible lately, and he was knocked out twice in the first round, once as a pick'em, and the other time was a plus 285 underdog. The other time he was a minus 225 favorite. So not only has he been in bad form, but the market has been overpricing his betting lines in relation to his performance in the cage. Court has lost 6 of his last 8 fights, so it's hard to back him finding a win at the age of 39. But lucky for Court, his opponent is 40 years old and has even more miles on the engine, so you never know. Now, Tim Means is 40 years old. He's 33-16, 1-1 as a professional, and he's 13-13-1 in the UFC, the one being a no contest, not a draw. So Tim has lost 4 of his last 5 fights, and he's coming off a first-round knockout loss to Uros Medic as a plus 245 underdog. Before that, he got a third-round knockout win over Andre Fialho as a plus 135 underdog. Prior to that, he was subbed in the second round by Alex Morono as a plus 180 underdog. He lost a split decision to Max Griffin as a plus 155 dog and was submitted in the second round by Kevin Holland as a plus 250 underdog. Means may have lost 4 of his last 5 fights, but he was priced as an underdog in all 5 of those fights. So the market's been pretty low on Means lately, and you could say Means had value as a plus 145 dog versus Fialho, where he won, a plus 155 dog versus Max Griffin, where he got a split decision loss. So both McGee and Means they're both old. They've both been losing a ton of fights lately, but the market's done a more accurate job of pricing Tim Means than they have Court McGee. Means is priced as a favorite for the first time since 2021 when he won a decision against Nicholas Dalby as a minus 130 favorite. So when it comes to strength of schedule, both of these guys have been in the UFC for over 10 years. They both have so many fights and have seen so many different styles and body types. According to my metric, it's McGee who has fought and beaten the slightly more experienced guys with the slightly better win-loss ratios. But so much of this information is from a different era of MMA when these guys were completely different fighters. The reality is, neither of these guys has looked good lately. Both are on their way out, and anyone halfway decent is beating both of these guys right now. So I'd say strength of schedule is kind of a wash here. But if you look at the metric, it's Court McGee who's fought the better guys with win-loss ratios, both overall and in his wins. So I'd lean just a little bit to the McGee side, but in my opinion, when you use the eye test, it looks like they fought a pretty similar level of schedule lately. The distance striking stylistic components, both of these guys have been net minute winners at distance striking range over the long term. Both guys have positive distance striking differentials, positive 1.1 for Means, positive 0.9 for McGee. Both guys have above average 63% striking defense, but the difference is in the power numbers and in the accuracy. Tim Means has a 9-4-5 against knockdown ratio in the UFC, so an almost 2-to-1 ratio there, while for Court, it's 3-4 and 5 against. So 3 knockdowns to 5 for Court, and Tim is landing a knockdown on 0.7% of the significant strikes that he lands, while for McGee, it's 0.3%. So Court is 0 wins and 3 losses to the KO in the UFC, and Means is 5 wins and 3 losses. So it's fair to say that Tim Means should be the guy more likely to win moments while this fight is at distance striking range, which is significant because these guys both spend around 2/3 of their UFC octagon time at distance striking range. In addition, Tim is 3 inches taller, and even though they have the same reach, it's obviously Tim who is the longer, rangier guy. I'd say I confidently favor Tim Means at distance striking range in this fight over Court McGee. Now, when it comes to the clinch and the grappling stylistic components of this fight, I've always rated Court McGee as a plus grappler. He's never been submitted in 34 professional fights. He's fought some of the best grapplers in the business, and he's always been able to use his wrestling, his pace, and his cardio as weapons. And as such, he does his best work when he makes his opponents grapple with him. Court gets 1.8 takedowns per 15 minutes since 2013, but he only gets his takedowns at a 24% clip. He outcontrols his opponents 28% to 6%, winning 83% of the control time positions in his fights. Court and Tim, they both train at elevation, but I believe Court has the better conditioning. So if he chooses to use his wrestling and cardio as weapons while at elevation in his home state of Utah, we could see the best version of Court McGee that we've seen in a while. Tim Means is a solid wrestler in his own right. I believe he coaches a high school wrestling team, so it's good to see him working on that part of his MMA game. Tim has above average grappling efficiency at the UFC level. His takedown defense is subpar at 60%, but his takedown accuracy is above average at 40%. The problem for Tim is that he's 2 wins and 5 losses to the submission in the UFC, and 7 of his 16 pro losses come by way of submission. We haven't seen McGee sub anyone since Obama got elected for the first time, but he still is an excellent grappler, and Tim Means leaves openings all the time. I definitely favor McGee's minute and moment winning ability in the grappling exchanges of this fight. If he uses his cardio as a weapon, I think he gives himself a great chance to win this fight. Now, Court McGee is actually a year younger than Tim Means. He's got a slight strength to schedule advantage. He's got the better cardio, and he's got the wrestling and the grappling and the submission upside in this fight, in my opinion. But the weakness is Court's got a lack of power. He doesn't really have knockout power. He's 39 years old, and he's on a 3-fight losing streak. Tim Means is 3 inches taller. He's got the pro experience advantage with 17 more fights and 10 more minutes of cage time. He's got the UFC experience advantage with 10 more fights and 50 more minutes of octagon time. He's got the finishing ability advantage, and he's got the power advantage. But he's 40 years old, and there are so many miles on the engine of Tim Means. So it's always tough to cap fights where the question on everybody's mind is, which guy is more washed, right? I think the stand-up favors Means, especially early, and I think he's the guy more likely to win moments at distance striking range. Tim is taller, he's more experienced overall, and he flashes early power. And Court McGee's been knocked out in the first round 3 different times at the UFC level. Court is the younger guy. He has a slight strength of schedule advantage, according to my metric, and his cardio combined with his ability to win minutes with his wrestling and grappling make him an intriguing underdog to back at elevation. No matter who you bet on here, you're betting on an old dude whose best days are behind him. So the question remains, which of these guys is more washed? I honestly have no idea, and I really have no clue who wins this fight. The spots that I think are clearly cheeky for this fight are Tim Means to win by first-round knockout, as all 3 of McGee's finished losses in the UFC are by first-round knockout, and 3 of Tim Means' 5 UFC wins by KO come in the first round. So I also like McGee by submission. If he drags Tim into deep waters with a high-paced grappling match, he absolutely could drown Tim late in this fight. So McGee by submission at plus 750 also has my attention. For the sake of making a pick, I'll go with Tim Means by first round knockout, but I'm not touching the money line on this fight. And this is a fight that I could really see going either way. Like when it came time for me to make the prediction on this fight, I was like, oh shit, I could see this going a few different ways. So I don't really care about the pick, right? I'm going Means first round knockout, but it could just as easily, in my opinion, be Court McGee by decision, Court McGee by second or third round submission. So what I do like here is violence. I think that somebody's going to get served. I mean, Tim Means has been submitted so many times, and Court McGee really is a very good grappler. So I could see Court McGee getting a submission in this fight at some point if he chooses to grapple. Remember, it's in Salt Lake City. It's at elevation. If people push a pace, if fighters with good cardio push a grappling heavy pace against guys that slow down, they could potentially get late finishes. So, yeah, I mean, like Tim Means by first round KO is going to be the official pick for this fight. Let me see. Here we got the make picks. And the official pick is going to be Tim Means by first round KO. But like I say, you guys, fight doesn't go to decision at plus 125. That has my attention. Court McGee by submission at plus 750. That has my attention. And Tim Means by first round knockout at plus 900 on Bet Rivers. That also has my attention. And we got Deep Montana, my guy, the Godfather, in the room saying, Uncle Weezy, the GOAT. Good to see you hanging out in here, K-Deep. You're the only one with me right now. It's just one person live here in the room, but who cares? We got this. This is going to be on the Patreon and the Dub Club for everybody. You can watch it at your convenience. You can download the fight write-ups at your convenience and take advantage of all the research that I've done on these fights for you guys. Let's move on to the next fight. It is going to be Carla, the Cookie Monster Esparza, plus 150. Going up against Tecia Torres, who's minus 175, and the fight doesn't go to decision here. Big plus money number at plus 375. The bookies are definitely expecting this one to go the distance. So let's get the stats up here on the screen. There they are. And this is the one fight that I haven't done a write-up on yet. And there's a reason for that. Carla Esparza, we can see right here on the layoff part of the spreadsheet, 1 year and 10 months is how long she's been away from the cage. And, I mean, obviously that's going to be a problem. Carla is not really that old for a female mixed martial artist. 37 years old. There's plenty of ladies that are still performing at a high level at the age of 37. So it's not like Carla is old or washed or has too many miles on the engine here. As a matter of fact, Tecia Torres has more fights at the UFC level than Carla does. But Carla has gotten married. She's coming off the worst loss of her life by a country mile. And she's been away from the cage for almost 2 years, and she had a baby. And she's already said, I am retiring after this fight. So this is the retirement fight. So the R word, almost 2-year layoff. She's coming off a baby. And even if Carla gets takedowns here, I mean, I think Tecia might be able to get back up. So I kind of feel like this should be Tecia. Ticia's looked really good lately, you guys. The win against Angela Hill was fantastic. The knockout win over Sam Hughes was dominant. The split decision losses to Mackenzie Dern and Tabitha Ricci easily could have went her way. I'm not saying that she deserved to win. I'm saying that those fights were as close as it got. And either one of those fighters, whether it was the Ricci fight or the Dern fight, could have gotten their hand raised at the end. Flip a coin. The judges had a really difficult test that's like the kind of fight that you don't want to be a judge for, because somebody's going to be pissed at you because both fighters probably deserve to win. So Torres is fighting at a higher level right now. She's only 4 months removed from her last fight. And the volume that she puts out there is a big deal. You see that Carla Esparza at distance striking range is only landing 2.1 distance strikes per minute. Tecia Torres lands 3 times that many at 6.4, and she throws twice as much volume out there as Esparza's only attempting 7.1 distance strikes, and Tecia Torres is doing 14.2. In addition, I think you're going to need more than 28% control time to bank enough minutes of this round to win this fight, especially if you're doing way less at distance striking range. And the thing about Tecia is that even at 35, she's always been the same fighter that she was when we first were introduced to her. She's got phenomenal conditioning. She's always going to come to the cage in 100% phenomenal shape. She's got a body on her. She's jacked up. She's always in good shape, and she's always ready to push a pace for the full 3 rounds. So I think there's a lot of reasons why we could see just Carla fall apart like a Chinese motorcycle after 2 years away from the cage at elevation. She's already said that she's retiring after the fight. She's had a baby too. So in terms of just handicapping this fight, Esparza has the strength of schedule advantage. Esparza has the minute winning in the grappling exchanges advantage. But Tecia is younger by almost 2 years. She's more experienced actually at the UFC level. She's been busier lately. She's been performing at a higher level lately. And the volume that she puts out there on the feet, the pace, the pressure, I think is going to be a lot for Carla here. So I'm going to be picking Tecia Torres to win this fight by decision. But there's no write-up on this fight. There probably won't be either. The only write-up that's not done yet that needs to get done is Spann versus St. Preux, and I'm halfway done with that write-up. So that one will be finished, but this one I'm going to leave alone, and I very highly doubt that I will have any action on this fight whatsoever. So let's go here, and it's going to be Tecia Torres by decision in this fight. Yeah, Tecia just looks in much better form lately. And she's married to the champion and is now going by the last name Pennington. Oh, dude, really? Your work and effort never goes unnoticed. You sent me a Cash App gift. I will always support your talent and work and will continue to do so. Dude, that really means a lot. Honestly, it does. You guys, I don't have a job right now. This is what I do full time, and I'm trying to build this into a business. I'm trying to upgrade the graphics, which I've been trying to do for literally a year. I need help with that, but I'd love to I've been working on my methodology. I've been kind of nailing it down and getting used to what kind of work needs to be put in order to put out this quality of a product every week without burning out, without, working 10, 12-hour days watching tape and putting myself in a situation where I might burn out. So truly appreciate when I get this kind of support from you guys. It means a lot. Thank you, my man, the Godfather. Truly means a lot for the support. Really mean it. Let's move on to this next fight, you guys. We got a full write-up. No, not a full write-up, but we got most of the write-up here. And let's face it, I mean, you can analyze this fight down to every detail. You can look at every hair on Oldvince St. Preux's head, every hair on Ryan Spann's head, watch every second of tape of both of these guys, the entire career that they have, and you're still going to have no idea who's going to win this fucking fight because both of these guys pull stunts all the fucking time. Neither one of these guys can easily both fuck up a cup of coffee, and you just, oh God, can you imagine laying minus 235 on Ryan Spann and losing? The kind of internal dialogue that you're going to be having with yourself, the kind of questions that you're going to be asking of yourself, like where did it all go wrong? How did I get here? What happened? All the potential is gone. That my family thinks I'm a loser. All these things are going to be running through your head if you lay juice on Ryan Spann and lose. But let's put in the work. We're not going to cheat, you guys. We're going to put in the work. So let's talk about the trends. And let's start with Ryan Spann. The man is 33 years old, Mr. Spann. And let me get the stats up here for you guys. Oh, God. Let me get a sip of my beverage, too. Shout out to the good folks at Hop Butcher for keeping your Uncle Weezy fully croissant here and ready to go. All right. So Ryan Spann, 33 years old, 21 wins and 10 losses as a professional, 7 wins and 5 losses in the UFC thus far. Ryan is currently on a 3-fight losing streak, and he's 2 wins and 3 losses in his last 5 fights. Ryan is coming off a second-round knockout loss versus Bogdan Guskov. He was a minus 175 favorite in that fight, and before that, he lost a very close split decision to Anthony Smith, and he was a minus 130 favorite in that fight. Before that, he was subbed in the first round by Nikita Krylov as a plus 145 underdog. And before that, Spann cashed twice in a row over Dominic Reyes as a plus 180 underdog and over Iwan Kutalaba as a plus 195 underdog. Ryan is an inconsistent fighter who the market gets wrong regularly. In his last 5 fights, he's 1 win and 2 losses when he's priced as a underdog. And he's 0 wins and 2 losses when he's priced as a favorite. So he's been priced between plus 190. He's been as big of an underdog as plus 190 in his last 5, and he's been as big of a favorite in his last 5 as minus 175. And having just shit the bed violently as a minus 175 favorite against a total bum in Bogdan Guskov, now the market is making Ryan Spann a minus 235 favorite against Oldvince St. Preux. So God help us here. So let's talk about Oldvince. He's 41 years old. He's 27 wins and 17 losses as a pro, and he's 15 wins and 12 losses in the UFC. Oldvince is 2-3 in his last 5 fights, with all 3 losses being finishes and both wins coming by split decision. Oldvince is old. They should call him Oldvince. He looks like he's fighting in slow motion, but somehow, last time out, he against Kennedy and Nzechukwu, he looked like he turned back the clock and he cashed as a plus 500 underdog by split decision. Before that, he got his ass shaved in less than a minute by Felipe Lins as a plus 185 underdog. And before that, won a split decision over the rotting corpse of Mauricio Shogun Rua as a minus 270 favorite. It was shocking to see Oldvince get a win in 2024. He looked really good in that fight. Ryan Spann is as likely to pull a stunt as a big favorite as any fighter in the UFC. So OSP could certainly be a live dog this week. The strength of schedule, my metric indicates that OSP has a sizable strength to schedule advantage in this fight. The combined UFC records of OSP's 27 UFC opponents since 2013 is 221 wins and 151 losses, as you can see right there. That's 13.8 total fights and a 1.5 win to loss ratio. While for Spann's 12 opponents, it's 91 and 87, 14.8 total fights, a 1.0 win to loss ratio. So OSP's wins, they also rate better. As you can see here, 13.9 and a 1.1 ratio compared to 14 total fights and a 0.8 ratio for Ryan Spann's wins. OSP has fought for the belt. He's fought several guys who either were champion or fought for the belt at some point. Spann's fought a solid level of competition on the regional scene and in the UFC. So even though he's at a slight strength to schedule disadvantage, according to my metric, a 41-year-old OSP isn't exactly a step up in competition for Ryan Spann at this point in his career. So the strength of schedule edge on paper goes to Oldvince St. Preux, but not really by a whole lot. When it comes to the distance striking here, both of these guys are basically net minute losers. Negative 0.8 differential for Spann at distance, negative 0.5 for St. Preux. A 6-6 knockdown ratio for Oldvince St. Preux, a 5-3 knockdown ratio for Ryan Spann. So Ryan does have great power. He's landing a knockdown on 2% of the significant strikes that he lands. So at that rate, he's going to land a knockdown like once every 50 significant strikes landed. So the dude is somebody that you don't want to stand in front of for too long, because if he uncorks one and it lands on your chin, it's going to probably be nighty night for you. So, but St. Preux's got power too. I mean, this guy's definitely got power, but it's just Spann does a little bit more. Spann is going to be the 2 inches taller guy. He's going to be the slightly longer guy, even though St. Preux's got a 1-inch reach advantage. It's definitely Spann that's the taller, longer guy of the two. And then, when it comes to minute winning, I think that both of these guys are net minute losers. So when it comes to the grappling exchanges, Ryan is a little bit more active getting takedowns and attempting them. He's done a slightly better job of being efficient in the grappling exchanges and winning minutes on the ground. And Ryan Spann's got a phenomenal guillotine. I mean, he can finish you if you stick your head in there. If he hurts you with a strike on the feet and you panic wrestle and you put your head in the wrong spot, he's going to finish you with his guillotine. The problem with the guillotine being the best submission for Spann is that when you try to lock up a guillotine against Oldvince St. Preux, that opens up the opportunity for that Von Preux choke that he's finished fights with 3 separate times at the UFC level. So that shoulder choke, when you trap the arm, when somebody's going for a guillotine on you, if when they wrap up your neck, if you can get out of their guard and move off to the choking arm side, you can absolutely finish the fight with that shoulder choke, that Von Preux choke, which is now called the Von Preux because Oldvince has gotten it so many times. So, on the feet, I'd probably favor Spann a little bit here. In the grappling, I probably favor Spann to probably go for takedowns and maybe win the minutes in the grappling exchanges. But I also think that Oldvince St. Preux could absolutely catch Ryan Spann in a Von Preux choke. If there's somebody dumb enough to put their fucking head in a Von Preux choke against Oldvince St. Preux, it's Ryan Spann. So Oldvince St. Preux submission plus 1,300. That is a cheeky look for this week, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, Spann a couple inches taller. St. Preux got a little bit more experience overall, a lot more experience at the UFC level. St. Preux's got a slight strength to schedule advantage. But Ryan Spann, I think, is going to be a little bit more explosive in the grappling and the striking exchanges. He's 8 years younger, a lot less tread off the tires for Spann. And, and Spann sucks ass. I mean, don't get it wrong. This guy is not the kind of guy you lay juice on, but he's still only 33 years old. He still has all the physical gifts. He still has natural power, natural size and strength for the division. If he ever starts taking his career seriously, starts actually trying, starts actually training, this guy could put together a winning streak and be really good. But there's no indication that any of those things are happening behind the scenes. He seems to be like a guy that's all talent and no work. And it shows. It really shows with his performances in the cage. So, yeah, you don't lay juice on Ryan Spann, and it's hard, really hard to back St. Preux at 41 years of age. I mean, at this point in my betting career, you guys, I would rather sleep over at Diddy's house than lay juice on Ryan Spann's money line. So this is one that I have to pick Ryan Spann because he's just the better fighter right now in both of their careers. He's more explosive. And since both these guys are absolutely capable of pulling stunts, I'm going to lean to the Spann side. I will not be parlaying him. And I don't think I'll be betting on this fight in any way. But the pick is going to be Ryan Spann. And we'll pick him to win with an early KO. We'll go first round KO. So Ryan Spann to shave the ass of Oldvince St. Preux by KO in round 1. That's what we're going to go with. All right. Did I ever even put that? I did. All right, good. So then let's move on to the next fight. And that one is going to be, well, according to UFC stats, it's Almeida Pereira. But according to my, yeah, all right. So we'll do Almeida Pereira. It's going to be Cesar Almeida at minus 360 going up against Ihor Poteiria, the plus 285 underdog. Fight doesn't go to decision here. Juice to the tits at minus 700 for this fight. So, let's see. Let's get the stats up on the screen here. And Almeida and Pereira, we got those up. What is up, K-Deep? I heard someone say if Ryan Spann loses, he better have an application for Planet Fitness. I love it. He'd probably be the guy giving you a dirty look when he had to look up from whatever it was that he was doing to scan your card. Dear God, help us. I can't believe that Ryan Spann is fighting OSP. I am not going to have money on it, guys. All right. So we got Almeida versus Pereira. So recent trends. Cesar Almeida, 36-year-old kickboxer. He made the switch to MMA a few years back. It's listing him as having an 8-year mixed martial arts career, but obviously he took a mixed martial arts fight or two while he was still just entirely kickboxing. So while it looks like he has an 8-year career, most of his fights have been in the last couple of years for MMA. So he's 5-1 as a professional, is Cesar Almeida, and he's 1-1 in the UFC so far. He's coming off a split decision loss. Even though that was a split decision, that fight wasn't close. I kind of felt like Cesar lost all 3 rounds there. The fight was close in the respect that Cesar won on the feet. He was doing the better work at distance striking range, but he was so easily taken down and controlled that he wound up losing all the rounds just clearly enough that it should have been a 30-27. I have no idea how a judge got to 29-28 Almeida, and I kind of even felt Sal D'Amato's scorecard was a little bit irresponsible at only having it 29-28 in favor of Kopylov. But either way, he was a minus 115 pick'em there. So I'd say he underperformed in terms of his betting line there. And he showed pathetic takedown defense, no ability to get back to his feet against a guy who never wrestles in Roman Kopylov. And he made his UFC debut against Dylan Budka, another wrestler, and he won that fight by second-round knockout as a plus 125 underdog. And Cesar got his UFC contract off the strength of his unanimous decision win on Dana White's Contender Series over LFA champion Lucas Fernando as a plus 220 underdog. Cesar has been underestimated by the markets thus far due to his one-dimensional skill set. However, prior to the Kopylov fight, Cesar's anti-grappling actually looked serviceable enough to keep the fight standing where he needed it to be against Budka and Fernando. Budka was unable to take him down and hold him down, and Fernando was getting takedowns, but like Cesar was reversing him, was actually doing way more damage on the ground, defending the takedowns with his anti-grappling. Now, Ihor Poteiria is 28 years old. He's 20 wins and 6 losses as a professional, and he's 2 wins and 4 losses in the UFC so far. He's lost 3 of his last 4 fights and is coming off a first-round submission loss against the white-hot Michel Pereira as a plus 400 underdog. Prior to that, he got a unanimous decision win over Robert Bricek as a plus 135 underdog, and before that, he was knocked out in the second round by Rodolfo Bellato as a plus 335 underdog. A fight that Ihor was winning, and it probably should have been stopped, but Ihor gassed trying to get the finish, and Rodolfo was able to weather the storm and get a come-from-behind win. Ihor has been priced as an underdog in 5 of his 6 UFC fights. The only fight he was favored to win was against the rotting corpse, once again, of Mauricio Shogun Rua back in January of 2023. So obviously the market has not been high on Ihor's chances, and with good reason. He's not a very good fighter at this point in his career. When it comes to the strength of schedule of both fighters, Ihor has 4 more fights at the UFC level, and he's been in there against Ulberg and Pereira. So he's definitely fought the better level of competition at the UFC level overall. However, Almeida had a close fight with Roman Hopalov, while the only guys Ihor has beaten are Robert Bricek and a cadaver named Mauricio Shogun Rua. So I honestly think Cesar has shown that he can hang with a higher level of fighter than Ihor can at this point. The strength of schedule advantage does go to Ihor on paper, but I don't think Cesar is really outgunned here. When it comes to the distance striking, Cesar is a high-level kickboxer. He's been in there and beaten some of the best in the world. He's the better minute and moment winner in the distance striking exchanges, and it probably won't be very close there. Ihor's striking looked good in the first half of the Bellato fight, and in the second and the third rounds of the Bricek fight after Robert started to slow down. Poteiria's UFC distance striking metrics are actually really good. He's got a positive 2 distance striking differential. He's got above average 45% accuracy, and he's got 66% distance striking defense, which is really good. He's a southpaw. He moves fairly well. He's flashed some power and the ability to win minutes. But Cesar has big power. He's fast. He's technical. He switches stances often, and he mixes up his targets and his weapons really well. Ihor isn't bad at range, but it's pretty obvious that if Ihor doesn't wrestle, that he probably gets picked apart and finished at range by Cesar Almeida. When it comes to the clinch and the grappling, Ihor needs to wrestle here. The problem is Ihor has completed 0 takedowns in 6 UFC fights. Now, he's 6 wins and 1 loss to the submission as a pro, and he has a Sambo background, but he hasn't shown the ability to win minutes or moments with his offensive wrestling at the UFC level yet. Cesar's ground game is hot ass. His anti-grappling looked good in the Fernando and the Budka fights, but he's still pretty easy to take down. Only 34% of Cesar's UFC octagon time has been spent at distance striking range. And that number needs to go way up if Cesar is going to make any noise in the middleweight division. Cesar gets out-controlled by his UFC opponents 65.4% to 0.9%. He's losing 98% of the control time positions his fights are in. So there's a clear path for Ihor to win this fight. Wrestle the shit out of Cesar for the duration of the fight. At elevation, that's going to be a very tough road to hoe, but it's definitely what Ihor needs to do. So Cesar Almeida, the strengths, it's only striking and kickboxing in this matchup. But the weaknesses are a lack of experience in MMA and the grappling. But Ihor Poteiria, he's going to be 8 years younger. He's got all the on-paper advantages. 8 years younger, 2 inches taller, 1 inch reach advantage, the pro experience advantage with 20 more fights and 110 more minutes of cage time. He's got the UFC experience advantage with 4 more fights and 18 more minutes of octagon time. He's got the UFC strength to schedule advantage, and he's got the grappling advantage. So this should be a really exciting fight. Pereira always brings fun fights. He's still only 28 years old, and he does look to be steadily improving. He's fighting at the right weight class for him now, and he's definitely the more well-rounded and more well-tested fighter at this point in both of their careers. Ihor has all the measurables advantages, being 8 years younger, 2 inches taller, having a 1-inch reach advantage. He's fought the tougher strength to schedule and is the better minute and moment winner in the grappling exchanges. Cesar needs to keep this fight standing, and if he can, he probably not only wins the fight, but he probably gets a KO. Cesar is miles better at range, and he has nuclear power in his hands and in his kicks. We haven't seen Ihor use his wrestling effectively yet, but we could have said the same thing about Kopylov before he fought Almeida, and Kopylov looked like Jordan Burroughs against Almeida. I think Cesar wins here. I think it's going to be difficult for Ihor to wrestle for long at elevation without gassing himself out, and being in the big cage gives Cesar more room to move and stay off the fence. Ihor might have some success, but I could see Cesar landing elbows like he did in the Budka fight, or even getting a reverse or a takedown of his own, as Ihor hasn't shown the ability to win minutes or moments with his grappling yet at this level. I think Ihor's only path is by decision, while I think Cesar could win minutes or moments with his striking. I'll pick Cesar to win by KO, but Ihor by decision at plus 1,200 actually has my attention here. But I am going to pick Cesar Almeida to win this fight by second round knockout. KO round 2. There we go. All right, let's move on to the next fight, which is going to be Austin Hubbard at plus 140 going up against Alexander Hernandez, who's the minus 160 favorite. The fight doesn't go to decision here. Is at plus money at plus 155. So let me get these stats up here on the screen for you guys. Take a sip of beer. And let's break down this fight. All right. So, recent trends. Alexander Hernandez is 32 years old, 14 wins and 8 losses as a pro, and he's 6 wins and 7 losses in the UFC so far. Alex has lost 4 of his last 5 fights, and he's coming off a split decision loss versus Damon Jackson as a minus 190 favorite, a fight where Alex missed weight by a whopping 4 pounds, weighing in at 150. Prior to that, he lost a unanimous decision to Bill Algeo as a minus 120 favorite. And before that, Alex won a unanimous decision versus Jim Miller as a minus 235 favorite. Before the Miller fight, Alex was finished 2 times in a row in the second round by Billy Q as a plus 140 underdog and by Renato Moicano as a plus 135 underdog. The market has overpriced Alexander Hernandez in damn near all of his last 5 fights. His last 2 losses are as an underdog, and he barely won versus Miller as a massive minus 235 favorite. Alex has lost 4 out of his last 5 fights, and he's underperformed market expectations in all 5 fights. And now he's a minus 170 favorite versus Austin Hubbard. Yikes. This is not a guy I want to lay juice on right now. Austin Hubbard is 32 years old. He's 16-7 as a pro, and he's 4 wins and 5 losses in the UFC thus far. He's coming off a unanimous decision win over Michael Figlak as a plus 145 underdog back in April. And before that, he lost by second round submission against Kurt Halabaugh in the tough finale as a minus 175 favorite. Austin advanced to the Ultimate Fighter finale as a result of a split decision win over Roosevelt Roberts and a unanimous decision win over Aaron McKenzie. Both fights took place in the Tough House, therefore they're unofficial. The market has had a really bad read on Hubbard. He cashed as an underdog versus Figlak, and he lost as a favorite versus Halabaugh. And now he's fighting a guy who has been consistently overvalued by the betting markets. So there could be some value on the Hubbard side. I mean, he's priced as an underdog, and Hernandez is priced as a favorite. And Hubbard won his last time as an underdog, and Hernandez is not cashed as a favorite since the Jim Miller fight, and he barely won that fight. Now, when it comes to the strength of schedule, there's a sizable strength of schedule advantage on the Hernandez side for this fight. The combined UFC records of Alex's 13 UFC opponents is 141 wins and 91 losses, while for Hubbard's 9 UFC opponents, it's 22 wins and 24 losses. More importantly, when you line up Hernandez's wins against Hubbard's, it's clear that these guys have not beaten the same level of competition. The combined records of the 6 guys that Hernandez beat, and that's Beneil Dariush, Olivier Aubin-Mercier, Francisco Trinaldo, Chris Gritzenmacher, Mike Breeden, and Jim Miller, is 70 wins and 42 losses, while for the 4 guys Hubbard beat, Kyle Prepolek, Max Roshkoff, Dakota Harry Bush, and Michael Figlak, those guys, four guys, have a combined UFC record of 0 wins and 8 losses. Austin has 4 UFC wins, and not one of those guys has 1 UFC win. Definitely giving a big strength of schedule advantage to Alexander Hernandez in this spot. Now, Alex is a power striker. 3 of his 6 UFC wins come by knockout. He's landed 4 knockdowns in 13 UFC fights, and he's landing a knockdown on 0.7% of the significant strikes that he lands. He's most dangerous early in fights, and he tends to fade down the stretch. Hubbard is more of a minute winner at distance striking range. He has some power, but it really hasn't translated at the UFC level. Austin has a positive 0.6 distance striking differential. He lands 5.7 and absorbs 5.1 distance strikes per minute. He gets better as the fight goes on, and he's never been dropped or knocked out in 9 UFC fights. Both guys throw a decent amount of volume, and both guys fight out of the orthodox stance. I favor Hernandez on the feet early and probably Hubbard late. Should be competitive in the distance striking exchanges here. When it comes to the clinch and grappling, both of these guys have above average grappling efficiency. Hernandez gets 1.1 takedowns per 15 minutes, and he allows 1.3. He's winning 53% of the control time positions in his fights, but his fight stays standing over 75% of his UFC octagon time, and he attempts and completes a below average amount of takedowns for the division. Now, Hubbard gets 1.7 takedowns per 15 minutes, and he allows 1.9. He's winning 44% of the control time positions in his fights, but his takedown accuracy and defense are both better than Hernandez. This fight is at elevation, and Hubbard has better cardio than Hernandez. So in my opinion, it would be smart for Hubbard to grapple early and often to not only avoid Hernandez's early power, but also to drain Hernandez's gas tank, making him slow down in the later rounds. I slightly favor Hubbard's ability to win minutes with his grappling over the course of this fight. Hernandez, the strengths, he's 1 year younger. He's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage. He's got the UFC experience advantage with 4 more fights and 15 more minutes of octagon time. He's got a big UFC strength of schedule advantage, and I believe he's the better finisher in this fight. But the weakness can be cardio, and this is at elevation in Salt Lake City. So, that is something that potentially Austin Hubbard might be able to take advantage of, because one of Austin Hubbard's strengths is cardio. He's going to be 1 inch taller. He's going to have the pro experience advantage with 1 more fight and over 100 more minutes of pro cage time. And I believe he's going to be the minute winner in both the striking and the grappling exchanges. But he's got a lack of good UFC wins. I mean, if he beat Alexander Hernandez, who's 6-7 at the UFC level, it would be his best UFC win by a country mile. So even though these guys, I think, have a fairly similar skill set in MMA, I do think that, this still would be by far the best win of Austin Hubbard's career. So if this fight were taking place at sea level and Hernandez was at -170, I might actually consider betting him. I think he's a lot more dangerous than Hubbard is. He has more power. He's fought and beaten the much better level of UFC competition. And I struggle to see how Hubbard could find ways to win minutes and bank rounds if Hernandez was less likely to get tired. But Salt Lake City makes this fight interesting because Hernandez's biggest weakness is Hubbard's greatest strength, and that's cardio. Austin could win this fight if he uses his cardio like a weapon and starts making this a high-paced, up-and-down grappling affair. Hernandez always has the chance to land a bomb in round 1 or 2, but both of these guys are 3-3 to the decision in the UFC, so neither guy has shown a great ability to bank rounds on the regular. I feel Hernandez, the guy with more power and the strength of schedule advantage, should be favored here, but the market has consistently overvalued Hernandez, and Hubbard cashed as a dog in his most recent fight. Hubbard by decision could be a nice look as well as a live bet on let me hang on just a second. As a live bet on Hubbard after round 1 if he isn't getting rinsed. I'll pick Alexander Hernandez to win this fight by decision, but I highly doubt I'm going to get involved with this fight at all. So I think maybe, yeah, it's down here. We're going to go with the Great Ape, Alexander Hernandez to win by decision, but I think it should be a pretty close fight. That leaves us with 7 more fights to break down. Almeida's been training with Alex Pereira, I heard. Yeah, well, they've fought 3 times, I believe. I think Cesar got 1 win and Alex got 2. But I wouldn't be surprised if Cesar was training with Alex. And if he is, that's a good thing because I see Alex training out there with Sean Strickland. If Alex is still kind of working with Glover, maybe Glover could help Cesar with his grappling defense, because that's something that he's gonna have to get a lot better at if he's gonna win minutes in this UFC right now. So, all right, but let's move on to the next fight, which is going to be a banger. Marina Rodriguez plus 164 going up against Iasmin Lucindo, the minus 189 favorite. The fight doesn't go to decision at plus 240 for this fight. So, let me find the notes on this one. There it is. Okay. Now, another sip of beer. Hang on. Okay. Marina Rodriguez, 37 years old. She's 17-4-2 as a pro, and she's 7 wins, 4 losses, 2 draws in the UFC. She's lost 3 of her last 4 fights, and she's coming off a split decision loss against Jessica Andrade as a plus 130 underdog back in April. Before that, she got a second-round ground and pound win over Michelle Waterson as a minus 310 favorite. Prior to that, she lost 2 in a row. A unanimous decision loss against Virna Jandiroba as a minus 115 pick'em, and a third-round knockout loss versus Amanda Lemos as a minus 225 favorite. Before the Lemos fight, Marina strung together 4 straight wins over Yan Xiaonan, Mackenzie Dern, Michelle Waterson, and Amanda Hebas. So Marina's a very good Muay Thai kickboxer with a very dangerous clinch game and serviceable grappling. I'd say the market has been accurately pricing her fights the last couple of times, but over the long term, I'd say Marina has been slightly overrated by the market. Iasmin Lucindo, still only 22 years old. She's 16-5 as a professional, and she's 3-1 in the UFC so far. Let me get these stats up here for you guys. Sorry, I forgot to put them up. All right. Iasmin is currently on a 3-fight winning streak, and she's won 10 of her last 11 fights. Iasmin's coming off a unanimous decision victory over Karolina Kowalkiewicz. She was a minus 375 favorite in that fight. And before that, she got a second-round submission victory over Pauliana Viana as a minus 200 favorite, and she started her winning streak with a unanimous decision win over Brogan Walker. That fight took place up at flyweight, and she was a minus 350 favorite in that one. Iasmin's only UFC loss was in her debut against Yasmin Jauregui, a fight she lost by unanimous decision as a plus 180 underdog, a short notice opportunity for Iasmin. Now, she's a high-level prospect. She has a ton of experience for someone who's only 22 years old. She's on a 3-fight winning streak, and even though the market has been overpricing her lines, she is meeting and or exceeding the market's expectations of her, and that is very impressive in my opinion. This is another step up the ladder for Iasmin, but she deserves this opportunity. Now, both fighters overall in UFC strength of schedule. Marina has 9 more fights at the UFC level compared to Iasmin. The combined UFC records of Marina's 13 UFC opponents is 101 wins and 80 losses. That's 13.9 total fights and a 1.3 win-to-loss ratio. Now, for Iasmin's 4 UFC fights, It's 16-18 with an 8.5 total fights and a 0.9 win-to-loss ratio. Marina Rodriguez's wins over Michelle Watterson twice, Yan Xiaonan, Mackenzie Dern, Amanda Hebos, Tecia Torres, and Jessica Aguilar rate better than Iasmin's wins over Brogan Walker, Polyana Viana, and Karolina Kovalkiewicz. This is definitely a step up in competition for Iasmin, but as I mentioned it before, she's performing at a high enough level to deserve it. I rate Marina as having the UFC strength of schedule advantage here, and a significant one. When it comes to the distance striking, both of these ladies do excellent work at distance striking range. Marina's a high-level Muay Thai kickboxer. She throws straight punches in combination. She uses her kicks to maintain range. Defensively, she rolls with punches, has good footwork, and she keeps her chin tucked, and her clinch game with knees and elbows is really nasty. Marina, over a massive sample size of UFC fights, has a positive 1.9 distance striking differential. She lands 5.1 and only absorbs 3.2 distance strikes per minute. Her defense is above average for the division, and she flashes power, having landed 2 knockdowns and finishing 2 of her 7 UFC wins by way of knockout. Iasmin Lucindo is more of a brawler. She's fast, and she throws her strikes with hate in her heart. She throws looping punches as opposed to the straight punches Marina throws, but Iasmin also has a positive distance strike differential at positive 0.7, and her accuracy at 43% and her defense at 68% are both above average for the division. Now, I favor Marina's ability to win minutes and moments at distance striking range, but Iasmin's no slouch, and she can keep this close with her volume and her ability to absorb damage without showing that it affects her. Now, when it comes to the grappling, Iasmin's done a nice job of mixing in her wrestling in order to win minutes. She's getting 2.2 takedowns per 15 minutes, only allowing 0.3. She outcontrols her opponents 19.5% to 6%, winning 75% of the control time positions in her fights, and her only UFC finish came by submission against the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in Polyana Viana. Marina Rodriguez has been a net minute loser in the grappling exchanges. She only gets 0.2 takedowns per 15 minutes, and she allows 1.6. Her opponents outcontrol her 31.5% to 6%, and she's losing about 84% of the control time positions in her fights. Marina has 65% takedown defense, and if you can get her back to the mat, the ability to win minutes will be there for Iasmin. I favor Iasmin's ability to win minutes on the ground in this fight, but I definitely favor Marina Rodriguez in the clinch when they're there. So clinch goes to Rodriguez, ground game goes to Lucindo, ability to get the fight to the ground goes to Lucindo, and then I like Marina Rodriguez's striking advantage here. Now, on the Rodriguez side, you're getting the taller athlete, 3 inches taller. She's got the pro experience advantage. Only 2 more fights, but 70 more minutes of pro cage time, 2 more years as a pro fighter. She's got the UFC experience advantage with 9 more fights and 140 more minutes of octagon time. She's got the UFC strength of schedule advantage, the striking advantage, and the better clinch game. The weaknesses for Rodriguez is the grappling and the fact that she's 37 years old. She's 15 years older than Iasmin Lucindo. Now, Lucindo, 15 years younger, 1-inch reach advantage. She's been the better finisher, having a 70% finish rate as a pro compared to 47% for Rodriguez, and she's got the grappling advantage in this fight. So this is a very interesting matchup. Iasmin Lucindo is a prospect with a very bright future in the UFC. She's only 22 years old. She's won 10 of her last 11 fights. Her striking looks good, as does her grappling, and the conditioning and durability are definitely both there. She's taking a step up the ladder to fight a ranked opponent in Marina Rodriguez. Marina's 37 years old. She's fought the best fighters in the division, but she's lost 3 of her last 4 fights. But the losses come against big names like Jessica Andrade, very close fight. Virna Jandiroba out-grappled her, and Amanda Lemos, who's got nuclear power. On the Lucindo side, you get a 1-inch reach advantage. You get the fighter who's 15 years younger. You get the better finisher, the more durable fighter with the grappling upside. Marina's taller. She's more experienced overall and in the UFC. She has the strength of schedule advantage, and I see her as the more likely minute and moment winner at distance and in the clinch. Iasmin needs to make this fight into a brawl. Marina is so clean and technical at range, so I don't see a brawler like Iasmin winning the minutes there. In addition, you don't want to be in the clinch with Marina because she will eat you up with knees and elbows. Takedowns and top control, as well as relentless forward pressure and output, are the ways to beat Marina. We saw Jessica Andrade lose 12 of 15 minutes against Marina, but edge out the decision because she got a takedown in the first and a minute of relentless output at the end of the second. And Iasmin has the ability to fight a similar style as Jessica Andrade did. I think this fight is going to be very close, so I think the line is wide on the Lucindo side. Iasmin is fighting the more experienced fighter who has fought the much better level of competition. So while Iasmin's a dangerous fighter, Marina's been in there against Zhao Nan, Andrade, Lemos, Jandiroba, Esparza, Hibas. So Lucindo isn't going to show her anything that she hasn't already seen in there. If Marina can keep this fight standing, I think she wins. If not, then I could see her losing enough minutes on the ground to give away the fight to Lucindo. I think this fight goes to full 15. I'm going to lean to the Rodriguez side. I'm going to back her experience, her length, her strength of schedule, and the striking and clinch advantages that she has in this fight. And I'm going to pick the upset here and pick Marina Rodriguez to win this fight by decision. But that being said, I think Iasmin Lucindo is a very good prospect with a very bright future in the UFC. But I think that this is too much too soon for her, and I'm going to pick Marina to win this fight. All right. That brings us to the next fight, you guys. And I've been talking a lot of shit about this one. So if this one goes tits up for your Uncle Weezy, he's going to be taking a lot of heat on Twitter. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Joaquin Buckley. We got Thompson, the plus 185 underdog. Buckley, the minus 220 favorite. And the fight doesn't go to decision, sitting at plus 150 for this fight. So let me get the stats up here on the screen for you guys. And let's talk some trends after we get past all the fight notes. Okay. Stephen Thompson is 41 years old. He's 17-7-1 as a professional, and he's 11 wins, 6 losses, and 1 draw in the UFC. Thompson's lost 3 of his last 4 fights, and at 41 years old, people are starting to wonder if it's time for Wonder Boy to hang him up. He's coming off a second-round submission loss to Shavkat Rakhmonov as a plus 450 underdog. Before that, he won by 4th-round doctor stoppage over Kevin Holland as a plus 145 underdog. And before that, he lost back-to-back unanimous decisions as a minus 210 favorite to Bilal Muhammad and is minus 160 favorite over Gilbert Burns. The market has been overpricing Stephen as of late outside of the Shavkat fight. Stephen does his best work at distance striking range, and the last 3 guys to beat him did it exclusively with their grappling. Stephen can still win at distance striking range. The question is, can he keep the fight there? Joaquin Buckley is only 30 years old. He's 19 wins and 6 losses as a professional, and he's 9 wins and 4 losses in the UFC so far. So a very impressive UFC record thus far. Joaquin is currently on a 4-fight win streak since he moved down to welterweight. He won a unanimous decision over Nursultan Ruziboyev as a minus 135 favorite back in May. Before that, he won by second-round ground and pound knockout over Vicente Luque as a minus 105 underdog. And before that, he won a unanimous decision over Alex Morono as a minus 170 favorite. Buckley has overperformed market expectations in his recent fights, getting wins over notable names like Luque, Morono, however, not being priced higher than minus 170 against a much lower level of competition in his last 3 fights. He's now priced as a minus 200 favorite against the toughest test of his career. So think about it, right? You got Buckley, who's been underdogs to guys like Luque, who's completely done. Alex Morono, he was a favorite against. But then you got a guy like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who just a couple of fights ago was priced as a minus 210 favorite against the current champion in Bilal Muhammad. He was priced as a minus 160 favorite against Gilbert Burns. And now he's being priced at plus 185 against Joaquin Buckley. So we've seen one guy in Thompson who's been severely overestimated by the market due to how good his striking is, and a guy in Buckley who's been underestimated by the market. So Buckley's had value. Stephen Thompson has pissed you off as a favorite a couple of times, but now it seems like instead of the twain meeting, it's just went completely past each other. And now you got Stephen Thompson being priced at plus 185 versus Buckley, when just a year and a half ago, he was minus 210 against the current champion. So I think that, you know, Stephen Thompson's still 41 years old, and that's a big talking point about this fight. But, you know, the divergence of where the lines were for these guys and where they are for this fight is screaming opportunity on the underdog side, to me at least. So let's talk about the strength of schedule. I mean, obviously, Thompson has 5 more fights at the UFC level. He's fought for the belt twice. He's been scheduled for 5 rounds, 9 different times at the UFC level, while Buckley has only fought in 3-round fights. The combined UFC records of Thompson's 18 UFC opponents is 180 wins and 107 losses. That's a 1.7 win-to-loss ratio. And on average, the guys that he's facing have 16 fights at the UFC level. Now, for Buckley, it's 72 wins and 59 losses, 10.1 total fights, a 1.2 win-to-loss ratio. But the thing is that he caught Vicente Luque after the brain hemorrhage. So Vicente Luque is a guy who's like 14-5 in the UFC. So like it looks like he beat a 14-5 fighter, but in reality, he fought a guy that's on his way out the door and has nothing left in the tank. So Stephen Thompson does have a big strength to schedule advantage in this fight. Now, when it comes to the distance striking, I didn't even finish reading that up. So Thompson's UFC wins are over guys like Robert Whitaker, Johnny Hendricks, former champion, Rory McDonald, fought for the belt, Jorge Masvidal, fought for the belt, Vicente Luque, Jeff Neal, Kevin Holland. Those are the wins. They rate better than Buckley's wins over Impa Kasanganay, Jordan Wright, Antonio Arroyo, Abdul Razak Al Hassan, Albert Duraev, Andre Fialho, Alex Morono, the ghost of Luque, and Nursultan Ruzaboyev. So Stephen Thompson's definitely fought, beaten, and lost to the more experienced brand of UFC competition with the much better win-loss ratios. Distance striking, Stephen Thompson is an elite striker. His UFC striking metrics are excellent, and they were acquired fighting at the highest level of the welterweight division. Thompson has a positive 2 distance striking differential. He's got 44% accuracy, 61.5% defense. He's got a 9-4-5 against knockdown ratio, and his karate style stance makes it extremely difficult to close the distance on him without being countered. Buckley has solid striking numbers in his own right. He's got a positive 0.6 distance striking differential, but his accuracy at 31% is way below average. Joaquin has an 8-4 knockdown ratio, and 6 of his 9 UFC wins come by way of knockout. I think Buckley is a dangerous striker, but I don't see the distance striking exchanges being close here. Buckley had massive problems closing the distance against a counter striker like Ruzaboyev, and his inability to be accurate at distance will have him being outpointed at range by the faster and more technically sound striker in Thompson. I see there being a potential knockout for Thompson here if Buckley is unable to get this fight to the ground. When it comes to the grappling, Buckley's done a decent job of using his wrestling, top control, and ground and pound to win minutes in recent fights. Buckley is 8 of 11 on his takedown attempts over his last 4 fights and has racked up 19% control time over those fights. Thompson is solid takedown defense, but once his back is on the mat, he has a hard time getting back to his feet. He's been dominated in the mat by recent fights by Gilbert Burns, Shavkat Rakhmonov, and the current champion, Bilal Muhammad. So we know the path is there for Buckley to use his grappling game to win minutes, But if he's only getting 20% control time against his last 4 opponents, would that be enough to make up for the deficit he's at distance striking range? I definitely favor Buckley's ability to use his grappling game to win minutes in this matchup, but it won't be as easy for him to do that as it was for 4-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion Gilbert Burns to do it. It won't be as easy for him to do it as it was as the current welterweight champion of the world, Bilal Muhammad. It won't be as easy for him to do it as it was for Shavkat Rakhmonov, a guy who's 17-0 as a professional and has finished all 17 of those wins inside the distance. So I hear a lot of people saying, yeah, Joaquin Buckley is just going to go out there and wrestle fuck Stephen Thompson. Well, the problem with that is that Joaquin Buckley would not grapple successfully with any of the guys that rinsed Stephen Thompson on the mat. As a matter of fact, Joaquin Buckley would probably be plus 300 against Gilbert Burns. Joaquin Buckley would probably be plus 400 against Bilal Muhammad. Joaquin Buckley would probably be plus 400 against Shavkat Rakhmonov. So I think that people are using really faulty reasoning for suggesting that Buckley is just going to go out there and win minutes against Stephen Thompson. It took Shavkat Rakhmonov 7 minutes to get a takedown against him. Shavkat Rakhmonov is a guy who's got 8 wins by knockout in his career, and he wanted nothing to do with Stephen Thompson at distance striking range. So, yeah, man, offensive wrestling output is very dangerous to overuse at elevation due to how it can deplete your gas tank. And so, yeah, if Buckley's path is by grappling and he's got all that muscle on his body in a tough weight cut, asking him to grapple hard for 3 rounds at elevation, yikes, I don't like it. Stephen Thompson, 2 inches taller. He's got the pro experience advantage with 100 more minutes of professional cage time and 4.5 more years as a pro. He's got 5 more fights at the UFC level with 140 more minutes of octagon time. He's got the UFC strength to schedule advantage, and he's got the power and the durability advantage. Stephen is the more powerful striker at range, and Buckley has been knocked out in 4 of his 6 pro losses, while Thompson has fought the much better level of competition, but has only been finished twice in 7 pro losses, and he's only been knocked out once, while, Buckley's been knocked out by 3 times just at the UFC level. So against a much lower level of competition. And Stephen Thompson obviously has the striking advantage here. But Stephen Thompson's weaknesses, he's 41 years old, and he can get dominated by dominant grapplers. Joaquin Buckley is 11 years younger, and that is statistically significant. These guys win almost 2/3 of the time when they're that much younger. He's got a 1-inch reach advantage, and he's got the minute winning advantage in the grappling exchanges. Joaquin gets more takedowns than he allows. He wins 60% of his fights control time positions, and he's got a positive 3.2 clinch and ground strike differential. So when he does get on top of you, he doesn't just lay there. He's doing damage, looking to posture up and land ground and pound. I rate Joaquin as the guy more likely to win minutes in the clinch and on the mat in this fight. But Joaquin Buckley's weakness is that he's extremely chinny, and that's a big problem against somebody like Stephen Thompson. So can the 41-year-old Wonder Boy pull another UFC win out of his hat against an up-and-coming 30-year-old prospect on a 4-fight winning streak? I think Thompson has a very good chance to win this fight, and I think that this line is way off. Thompson is 2 inches taller. He's more experienced overall than in the UFC. He's fought, beaten, and lost to the more experienced brand of UFC competition with the better win-loss ratios, and his minute and moment winning potential in the striking exchanges is way better than Joaquin's. Thompson has shown weakness to dominant wrestler grapplers like Rakhmonov, Burns, and Muhammad, but to be fair, those guys would all be massive favorites over Buckley, and Buckley's grappling game is nowhere near the level of Thompson's previous opponents. Buckley is 11 years younger than Stephen. He has a 1-inch reach advantage, and he is the guy more likely to win minutes in the grappling exchanges of this fight. Seeing Buckley be priced as a bigger favorite against Thompson than what he was against Morono, Luque, and Ruzaboyev is actually kind of funny because those guys are nowhere near the level of Stephen Thompson. The fight is in the big cage at elevation, so Thompson will have room to move and maintain distance striking range, and Buckley will have to be efficient with his offensive wrestling so he doesn't gas out trying to get takedowns. I love this fight stylistically for Thompson, and I think the pricing of the line is significantly off. I like Thompson to easily win the distance striking exchanges of this fight, and I think he will limit Buckley's offensive grappling success with his solid takedown defense and clinch game. I think Thompson lands the heavier shots, does more damage, and I think he's far more likely to get a knockout while this fight is at distance striking range. Buckley needs to get the takedowns and get to dominant positions and land ground and pound. If he can do that in 2 or 3 rounds, he can definitely win a decision here. If Thompson avoids making mistakes on the mat and doesn't allow Buckley to get to dominant positions, I think he easily wins the minutes and moments of this fight at distance striking range and gets his hand raised either by decision or knockout. I see Buckley gassing out, trying to grapple unsuccessfully, and Thompson picking him apart at range and finding a late finish by knockout. So this week, I am going with Stephen Thompson, the Wonder Boy, to win this fight by KO in round number 3. See what you guys are saying in the chat. Just play Thompson, not like last time. I'm just pay Thompson or just play him. But like I am playing Thompson, that is for sure. I've got 1.5 units on his money line at plus 175, and that's moving against me. So the negative CLV has been a harbinger of a winning bet for me lately. So we'll see that if I'm on an island here, if it pays off. But yeah, I'm going with Stephen Thompson to win this fight by 3rd round knockout. Just pay Thompson. Yeah, I'm paying him. I'm playing him, but he's 41 years old, so I don't know if he's going to be around that much longer. He's definitely an old man. But let's move on to the next fight. We got 5 more fights to break down here, you guys. It's going to be Roman Dolidze going up against Kevin Holland. We got Dolidze as an underdog at plus 122, and Kevin Holland at minus 142 is the favorite. Fight doesn't go to decision here at plus money at plus 155, which is crazy for guys that are as potent of finishers as Holland and Dolidze. They're both also known for being extremely durable. So a middleweight fight, Holland's got 10 finishes and 13 UFC wins. Dolidze's got 4 finishes and 7 UFC wins, but the fight goes to decision is sitting at like minus 180. So very interesting for this fight. Hang on just a sec. Oh, he didn't get paid, canceled? Really? I didn't know that. That's interesting. Anyway, so let's talk about the trends in this fight. Roman Dolidze, 36 years old, 13-3 as a pro, and he's 7-4 in the UFC, or no, 7-3 in the UFC thus far. Roman has won 5 of his last 7 UFC fights, but he's only 1-2 over his last 3. Roman's coming off a unanimous decision win over Anthony Smith on short notice. He was a minus 140 favorite in that fight. Before that, he lost a majority decision to Nasruddin Imavov as a plus 140 underdog. And don't let that majority decision fool you. That fight wasn't close. Roman was very close to being finished in the first round of that fight. And Nasruddin had a point deducted, so it kind of screwed with the scorecards a little bit. Before that, Roman lost a unanimous decision against Marvin Vettori, and he was a plus 205 underdog in that fight. Prior to the Vettori loss, Dolidze cashed 3 times in a row as an underdog. He was plus 160 versus Jack Hermanson. He was plus 145 versus Phil Hawes, and he was plus 210 versus Chris Daukaus, or versus Kyle Daukaus. So Dolidze has been priced as an underdog in 5 of his last 6 fights, yet he's won 4 of those fights. So I'd say the market has been underestimating Dolidze as of late, and he's priced as an underdog this time around. Kevin Holland's 31 years old. He's 26-11 with a no contest as a pro, and he's 13-8 with a no contest in the UFC. He's won 3 of his last 5 fights. He's coming off a win over Mihail Oleksiejczuk by first-round submission as a minus 300 favorite. And before that, he lost 2 in a row A unanimous decision loss to Michael Page is a minus 135 favorite, and a split decision loss to Jack Della Maddalena as a plus 125 underdog. Prior to that, Kevin won 2 in a row. A first-round submission win over Michael Chiesa is a minus 150 favorite, and a third-round knockout win over Santiago Ponzinibbio as a minus 250 favorite. Kevin will take fights at 170 or 185, and this one will be at middleweight, so you know that he will fight anyone, anytime, and that he always has an all-action style. The market's done a decent job of pricing his money lines, but he did fail as a favorite twice in recent memory. He was minus 170 versus Thompson, and he was minus 135 versus Page, due to the market overrating his distance striking skills against elite strikers. When it comes to the strength of schedule, Holland has 12 more fights at the UFC level, so he's obviously fought the tougher guys. But my metric also shows that Holland has faced the more experienced brand of UFC competition with the better win-loss ratios. The combined UFC records of Holland's 22 opponents is 181 and 124, while for Roman's 7 opponents, it's 53 wins and 47 losses. So Holland's UFC wins also rate better than Dolidze, so I'm going to have to lean to the Holland side and say that he has the strength of schedule advantage in this matchup. And when it comes to the distance striking, I think Holland will be the likely minute winner while this fight is at distance striking range. Holland is the busier striker. He attempts 13.4 distance strikes per minute compared to 10 for Dolidze. Holland also has the much better distance striking differential at positive 1.4 compared to negative 0.6 for Dolidze. And he lands more distance strikes per minute at 6 compared to only 3.9 for Roman. And he's been much more accurate at 45% compared to 39% for Roman. Holland is 6-1 to the knockout in the UFC, and his knockdown ratio is 5-0, as he's never been officially dropped in 22 UFC fights. But he did get dropped by Mihail Oleksiejczuk in his last fight. The statisticians didn't count it, though. Kevin is 1 inch taller. He's got a 5-inch reach advantage, and he's way faster and busier than Dolidze is. So I definitely favor Kevin to win the minutes of this fight at range. Dolidze is more of a plotter. He throws a lot of kicks, and he looks to land with power. Roman is landing a knockdown on 1.1% of the significant strikes that he lands, while for Holland, it's 0.5. Roman is 4-0 to the knockout in the UFC, so even though Kevin is longer, faster, busier, and more technical, Holland only has 52% distance striking defense, so he needs to be careful to not let Roman land a nuclear bomb that could steal a round. Both of these guys have power, but both of these guys are extremely durable, so I'd be shocked if either guy found a knockout in this matchup. Both guys can win moments, but I think Holland wins the minutes, so I will favor Holland in the distance striking exchanges. When it comes to the clinch and the grappling, both of these guys are high-level grapplers, but it's definitely Dolidze that has the minute and moment winning edge in the grappling exchanges of this fight. Roman gets 1.3 takedowns per 15 minutes on 3.2 attempts, and he outcontrols his opponents 30.6% to 8%, winning almost 80% of the control time positions in his fights. So Roman is definitely a net minute winner on the aggregate at the UFC level. Holland gets 0.9 takedowns per 15 minutes, and he allows 2.7. He gets 14% control time for, and he allows 32.5%, losing 70% of the control time positions in his fights. Holland only has 55% takedown defense, so he is a guy you can take down and hold down and win minutes against with your wrestling and top control. Dolidze has shown really poor fight IQ at times, refusing to wrestle against guys like Anthony Smith and Marvin Vettori when he had grappling advantages in those matchups. In addition, this fight is at altitude, so it'll be hard to wrestle offensively for long without getting tired. Combine that with the big cage and the good footwork of Holland, and I think most of this fight takes place standing, and I favor Dolidze's minute and moment winning ability in the grappling exchanges here. Roman Dolidze's got the durability advantage. He's got the grappling advantage, but I think his fight IQ is shit. Kevin Holland is 4 years younger. He's 1 inch taller. He's got a 5-inch reach advantage. He's got the pro and UFC experience advantages, and big ones at that. He's got the UFC strength to schedule advantage. He's been finishing more fights at the UFC level, and he's got the better striking. But his fight IQ also sucks. So this is an interesting matchup. Kevin Holland is moving back up to 185 to take this fight. Roman Dolidze has been underestimated by the market, being priced as an underdog in 5 of his last 6 fights, and he won 4 of those fights. Roman is extremely durable. He has serious power. He's got an opportunistic submission game, and he should be the better minute winner in the clinch and grappling exchanges. Kevin has all the measurables advantages here, being 1 inch taller, having the 5-inch reach advantage, and being 4 years younger. He's way more experienced overall and in the UFC. He's fought the more experienced brand of UFC competition with the better win-loss ratios. He's been a better finisher, and he has the striking advantage. The speed and athleticism gap here is huge in favor of Holland. Both guys don't have the best in-cage decision-making skills, so if I were relying on Dolidze to grapple to win minutes, I'd be worried that he might just choose the strike. Dolidze didn't wrestle at all versus Smith, a guy with zero takedown defense and get-up game. He was credited with a takedown in that fight, but it looked more like a knockdown to me. Dolidze made the Smith fight much closer than it needed to be because he didn't wrestle. And if he makes that same mistake against Holland, I think he gets picked apart at range by the faster, busier, and more athletic Holland. In addition, this fight is at elevation, so that is going to discourage too many wrestling-heavy game plans, which I think bodes well for Holland. I'm going with the younger, taller, faster, longer guy with the striking and the conditioning advantages to win the minutes of this fight with his striking on the way to a decision victory. So the pick is going to be Kevin Holland to win by decision. Decision. There we go. Whew. Damn, I'm working hard. It's an hour and a half in, and we still got 4 more fucking fights to go. Oh, give me a chance to get a little sip of beer here, you guys. Here's to you. Oh, man. Let's keep going. Next fight. Ketlen Vieira at plus 750 going up against 2-time judo gold medal winner in Kayla Harrison at minus 1,200. The fight doesn't go to decision here, sitting at plus 100. So when we talk about the trends, Ketlen Vieira, we'll start with her. 33 years old, 14-3 as a pro, and she's 8-3 in the UFC. She's currently on a 1+ year layoff after having to pull out of a scheduled bout with Macy Chiasson back in January, but she's won 3 of her last 4 fights, and she's coming off a unanimous decision win over Pani Kianzad as a minus 150 favorite. Before that, she had a very close fight with the current champion, Raquel Pennington, and she lost a split decision there as a minus 125 favorite. And prior to that, Ketlen won a split decision over Holly Holm in a 5-round main event as a plus 190 underdog in that fight. Holly probably should have won that fight, but Ketlen outperformed her plus 190 price tag, making that fight very close. Ketlen has been in a lot of close fights with top-notch competition. Her fights with Yana Santos, Holly Holm, and the current champion, Raquel Pennington, were all close fights. So it's clear that Ketlen belongs at the top of this division, but she's got an extremely difficult test in front of her in Kayla Harrison. Ketlen has been slightly underestimated by the market in her recent fights, and she's a massive underdog around this time around, being priced at plus 600. So let's see if she can outperform the market expectations yet again. Now, Kayla Harrison, she's 34 years old. She's 17 wins and 1 loss as a pro, and she's 1-0 in the UFC. She made her UFC debut back in April and won by second-round submission versus Holly Holm as a minus 450 favorite. Prior to that, Kayla was fighting up a weight class or 2 in PFL. She won a unanimous decision versus Aspen Ladd as a minus 1,000 favorite, and the only loss of her career came in November of 2022 against Larissa Pacheco. She lost a unanimous decision in a 5-round fight, and she was a minus 700 favorite in that fight. Kayla is elite. She's a 2-time Olympic gold medal winner in judo, and she's usually priced at around 90% implied favorite in nearly all of her fights. Her striking is solid. She has good head movement and footwork at range. She does a beautiful job of using her striking to set up the entries on her takedowns. And once she gets in the top position, she's got nasty ground and pound and a very opportunistic submission game. Good luck getting Kayla Harrison at a discount anytime soon. Strength of schedule, Ketlen has 10 more fights at the UFC level. So obviously she's been here longer and she's fought the bigger names. But Kayla was fighting at 145 and 155 in PFL, and she was mauling those hoes. So Kayla's UFC debut against Mahaly Holmes showed that she's definitely ready to perform at a very high level here in the UFC. Harrison's win over Holm was way more dominant than Vieira's win against Holm. So Kayla outperformed Ketlen when they faced a common opponent. Even though Ketlen has been in there against the better level of competition thus far, it's fair to say she's never fought as dangerous of an opponent as Kayla Harrison before. So I'm not sure strength of schedule analysis is of much use in this fight. Distance striking, I think Vieira has the distance striking advantage in this fight. She's been in there against the better level of competition as a pro, and even though her distance striking numbers at the UFC level aren't exactly elite, let me get this. I never even put the stats up here for you guys. Ketlen has shown that she can go punch for punch with some of the best in the division and dominate the striking exchanges against a solid fighter like Miesha Tate. Kayla is no slouch in the distance striking exchanges. She has natural power and explosiveness. She moves fairly well, moves her head, and she stays light on her feet. Kayla doesn't need to be at distance striking range for long due to how dominant her wrestling and judo are, but she doesn't seem scared to strike either. If this fight stays at distance striking range, I definitely favor Vieira's minute and moment winning ability while there, but I don't think Kayla will be massively outclassed. And when it comes to the clinch and grappling, I mean, Kayla has elite grappling. It's the reason her money lines are juiced to the tits all the time. Her wrestling is excellent. Her judo is elite. And her ability to finish fights with ground and pound and submissions is also elite. If she can't find the finish, she can easily win minutes and bank rounds with her offensive grappling game. Ketlen is also someone who has done an excellent job of winning minutes with her wrestling and top control. Ketlen averages 1.5 takedowns per 15 minutes, 31% control time for, 17% control time against, and she's winning 65% of the control time positions in her fights, and she's 4-0 to the submission as a pro. Even more importantly, she has successfully defended 26 of 28 takedown attempts at the UFC level. That's 93% takedown defense. And in order to win a fight against Kayla Harrison, you need to limit her opportunities to win minutes and moments with her grappling. The biggest problem I see with Vieira is while it's difficult to take her down, if you do get her back to the mat, her defense is as awful as is her get-up game. She lost the Santos fight despite winning 90% of the control time positions because when she did wind up on bottom, she was unable to defend ground and pound or get back to her feet. If Kayla gets a takedown and gets to a dominant position against Vieira, it could be game over because getting your face pounded in by Yana Santos and being unable to get back up with Penny Kianzad on top of you is a really bad look going into a Kayla Harrison fight. So Vieira is 1 year younger. She has a 2-inch reach advantage. She has the UFC experience advantage with 10 more fights and 160 more minutes of octagon time, and she has the striking advantage. The weaknesses for Vieira is if you get Ketlen on her back, her defense and her get-up game are not good. Now, Kayla Harrison's the southpaw in this fight. She's got the finishing ability advantage, and she's got the grappling advantage. So this is a great test for Kayla Harrison. Ketlen is solid everywhere. She has good striking, good conditioning. She's fought a solid level of UFC competition, and she's fought close with the top fighters in the division, and she's dangerous wherever the fight goes. Kayla Harrison is an elite prospect. Her grappling game is elite. Her ability to get takedowns in a multitude of ways is extremely impressive. Once she secures top position on the mat, she's a very opportunistic finisher. Kayla is coming for the belt, and there isn't one fighter in this organization that has a chance of stopping her. Once Kayla gets Ketlen down, and she will, it will be over shortly thereafter. The price on Vieira is intriguing at plus 600, but from what I saw from her when she does wind up in bottom position was not encouraging, because once Kayla gets her there, her defense will need to be elite just to even survive. So I think Kayla makes this one look easy. I think the line is accurate, and frankly, Ketlen needs a miracle to make this fight close and competitive. As long as Kayla shows up on weight looking ready to go, I don't see any reason to take the dog shot on Vieira. However, if Kayla has a brutal cut that can make the Vieira side at plus 600, very interesting. So we got to keep an eye on how Kayla Harrison looks on the scales, because at this wide of a line, if she comes up there looking like death warmed over, you might as well throw a unit on Ketlen. You never know, especially at elevation. You know, if she gasses out late in the fight and has nothing left in the tank, which is probably not going to happen, you know, at plus 600, you'll look like a genius for backing her. But I think Kayla is going to get the job done, and I think she's going to finish it in the first round by KO. I think Kayla Harrison is special, and I think that there's nobody that's going to stop her from wearing gold. So I think it's just a matter of time, and Ketlen Vieira is just the next rung on the ladder for her. Right. Kayla Harrison is like the Bengals for me, says KD, but I have to root for her because she's the home team. Where's she from, dude? I don't even know where she's from, but as somebody that grew up doing judo, I love to get behind a two-time judo gold medalist like Kayla Harrison. And my favorite women's fighter of all time was always Ronda Rousey, because she came from a judo base and really revolutionized the sport with her ground game and with her judo. So really good to see another elite judo athlete in here, one that's even better than Ronda Rousey was. Ronda Rousey wore bronze at the Olympics, but Kayla wore gold. And Middletown, Ohio, stand up. Kayla Harrison bringing home gold to the good folks at Middletown, Ohio. All right, we got 3 more fights to break down. We're an hour and 40 minutes in, so we're doing pretty good on time here. And we got a legend coming back in the house here. He's going to be Jose Aldo going up against Mario Bautista. Aldo is plus 124. Bautista, the favorite, at minus 144. The fight doesn't go to decision at plus 215, so we're looking at an over, and a fight goes. It's juice to the tits for this fight. So let's talk about the trends here. So after I get a sip of beer, Jose Aldo is 38 years old. He's got 40 professional fights, and he's won 32 of them. He's 11-7 in the UFC since the year 2013. Jose is a UFC Hall of Famer, and he's the king of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. He's won 4 of his last 5 fights. For a 38-year-old to win 4 out of his last 5 fights is fucking crazy. But he has. And he retired after losing to the current champion, Merab Dvalishvili, by unanimous decision. He was a plus 130 underdog in that fight back in August of 2022. He then took 3 pro boxing fights between February and July of 2023, then made his return to the UFC octagon in May of this year in Rio de Janeiro against Jonathan Martinez, and he won that fight by a 30-27 unanimous decision as a plus 145 underdog. Prior to the Merab fight, Jose had strung together 3 straight wins against Marlon Vera by unanimous decision as a minus 145 favorite, Pedro Munoz as a minus 115 pick'em, and Rod Font as a plus 125 underdog. Jose is still fighting at a high level, and he's always been incredibly well-rounded, and he's always fought the toughest guys for well over a decade. Obviously, being 38 years old in the bantamweight division is a major concern, but it doesn't look like the wheels are falling off just yet for Jose Aldo. Now, Mario Bautista, he's 31 years old. He's 14-2 as a professional, and he's 8-2 in the UFC so far. Mario is currently on a 6-fight win streak, and 3 of those 6 wins are first-round finishes. and the other 3 are by decision. So he's demonstrated the ability to win minutes and moments with his MMA skill set. Mario is coming off a unanimous decision win in January of this year over Ricky Simon as a plus 160 underdog. Before that, he beat Damon Blackshear by unanimous decision in a very close fight as a minus 210 favorite. Damon took that fight on less than a week's notice, and it was a 7-day turnaround. Prior to that, Mario finished Guido Canetti in the first round as a minus 1,000 favorite. He subbed Benito Lopez in the first round as a minus 300 favorite, and he subbed Brian Kelleher in the first round as a minus 185 favorite. Mario has had a pretty easy UFC strength to schedule thus far outside of his UFC debut versus Corey Sandhagen and his recent 2 fights against Ricky Simon and Damon Blackshear. But he's clearly showing that he's ready for the top 15 with the wins over Blackshear and Simon. He gets a legend on a pay-per-view card on Saturday. Let's hope he handles the pressure better than Jonathan Martinez did. But this fight is not in Rio de Janeiro against Jose Aldo. It's in Salt Lake City against Jose Aldo. So obviously, Jose has the strength of schedule advantage here. He's a former champion. He's fought the toughest featherweights and bantamweights in the world. The combined UFC record of Jose's 18 UFC opponents since 2013 is 226 wins and 123 losses, while for Bautista's 10 UFC opponents, it's 42 wins and 40 losses. The wins are better. The losses are better. This is going to be a step up for Bautista. He's fighting a 38-year-old legend who's in the Hall of Fame, but he's also won 4 of his last 5 fights, even though he's clearly on the downside of his career at the age of 38. So when we talk about the striking in this fight, I think the distance striking exchanges are going to be crucial for a couple of reasons. First, Jose Aldo never attempts takedowns. He prefers to box, so I think Jose wants to win a boxing match here. Bautista's a very dangerous grappler, but Jose Aldo has legendary takedown defense, so even if Mario's plan was to grapple, I doubt he's able to get Aldo down and hold him there. So then, the grappling exchanges would mostly be in the clinch. And if I'm right about that, then whoever wins the distance striking exchanges of this fight probably wins the fight. Mario is 2 inches taller. He's clearly the longer fighter, even though it's Aldo who has a 1-inch reach advantage. He does a better job than Aldo does of using his kicks and defensive footwork to maintain range. And Mario stays way busier, attempting 15.5 distance strikes per minute compared to only 9.6 for Aldo. Jose is a very good boxer. He loves to stand right in front of his opponents, slip and rip, mix in his kicks. He keeps a high guard. He rips to the body. He moves his head well, and he loves to find counters in the pocket. All the volume Bautista throws will give Jose opportunities to land those counters. Jose is still striking at a very high level, but Jose is comfortable being in that pocket and using his defense and his timing to clip you with big shots, like he did in the Font and the Martinez fights. I think the striking exchanges in this fight are going to be very close, but I favor Bautista's length, his volume, and his kicks, but Aldo is more precise and he's much more dangerous countering in the pocket. When it comes to the grappling, I highly doubt we see this fight hit the mat. Aldo almost never attempts takedowns, and his takedown defense is elite. Over 80% of Aldo's octagon time has taken place at distance striking range, and he's an incredibly efficient grappler. Bautista is a really good grappler in his own right. He's 6-1 to the submission as a pro, and his grappling efficiency numbers are also top-notch. It would be cool to see these guys grapple, and I think Bautista would be smart to mix it in, even if he's unsuccessful, because Aldo doesn't have the best cardio. So if you make him wrestle at elevation, it could be an opportunity for Bautista to use his conditioning as a weapon. Aldo's got a 1-inch reach advantage. He's got the overall and UFC experience advantages, and significant ones at that. He's got the sizable UFC strength of schedule advantage, and he's got the pocket boxing advantage. But he's a 38-year-old bantamweight, you guys. That's huge. Father Time really is undefeated, and it means so much more at flyweight and bantamweight than it does at light heavyweight and heavyweight. So, yeah, this is a tough one. But it's definitely 38-year-old bantamweight is a red flag. Bautista, 7 years younger than Jose. He's going to be 2 inches taller. He's a switch stance fighter versus an orthodox in Jose, and he's a volume and minute winning advantage at distance striking range just because he throws like way more volume than Jose does. So this is the right test at the right time for Bautista. Mario's most recent wins over Blackshear and Ricky Simon show that he's ready for top-notch competition, and Jose Aldo fits that description. Even though Jose is 38, he's won 4 of his last 5 fights. His boxing looks as good as ever, and he still looks fast and precise on the feet. I think this fight takes place mostly at distance striking range, and while it's there, I think it's going to be close. I favor Bautista's youth, his length, his height, and his ability to maintain range with kicks and lateral movement. And I think he throws and lands more volume, but I think Jose is more likely to land crisp counters and potentially win the moments with his slip and rip counters in the pocket. Jose has a huge UFC strength to schedule advantage here, and there's no way he's going to get toyed with at distance. I think Bautista should wrestle. I feel the one weakness in Aldo's game is the cardio. Cutting to 135 pounds at 38 years of age cannot be easy, and he hasn't wrestled offensively for years. So maybe he prefers to box because it's easier for him to manage his energy that way. If Bautista pushes a pace, avoids the big shot, I think he wins this fight. If he stands in front of Aldo and tries to win a pocket boxing match, I think he loses. It's up to Bautista to take advantage of his measurables, his cardio, and his output advantages here against Aldo and not give him the fight that he wants, which is a 3-round boxing match. I feel as if this fight should be priced as a pick'em, so I feel the value is on Aldo, but I do think Bautista has more tools to win if he makes Aldo fight at a high-paced fight with clinch and wrestling exchanges mixed in that can slow Jose down in the later rounds and allow Bautista's volume and distance management skills to take over. I'm going to pick Mario Bautista to win this fight by decision. Bautista decision is the pick, you guys. We got, which is in Cincinnati. Oh, okay, yeah, Cincinnati, Ohio. I've been there, man. I used to work for an investment banking firm back in the day called SBK Brooks, and they were based in Ohio. And I remember doing a trip through Ohio with my boss, talking to some of the pension funds that were looking for traders there so we could execute their orders. So, yeah, Cincinnati, stand up. Ohio, stand up. Kayla Harrison, stand up. It's a made fight for Harrison. Yeah, I mean, like, this is a great opportunity for her to take that next step, and she'll probably be next for the belt as long as this current championship fight isn't extremely close where they need a rematch. All right. Let's move on to the co-main event of the evening. It is going to be the current champion, Raquel Pennington at -160, going up against Juliana Pena, the Venezuelan vixen, who's the underdog in this fight at +140. The fight doesn't go to decision here, +190. So, we get the stats up here on the screen. And let's read this breakdown that I wrote out for you guys. All right. Raquel Pennington, we'll start with her. 36 years old, 16-8 as a pro, and she's 13-5 in the UFC. Raquel is on a 6-fight winning streak and is coming off a unanimous decision win over Mayra Bueno Silva, and she was a +140 underdog to win the women's bantamweight championship of the world. Prior to that, Rocky won a split decision over Ketlen Vieira. She was a slight underdog in that fight. And before that, won a unanimous decision over Aspen Ladd as a -160 favorite. Before that, Rocky won by second-round submission versus Macy Chiasson as a -135 favorite. Rocky's been priced fairly to cheaply, I would say. Fairly for most, cheaply in a couple in her recent fights. Cashing in a dominant win as a +140 underdog will have bettors very impressed with her last performance. I think the market has expected Rocky to slow down in recent performances, and Rocky has disappointed those people. She's definitely a hot fighter right now, but the market hasn't really caught up with how good Rocky has looked in recent performances. Now, Juliana Pena is 35 years old. She's 11-5 as a professional, and she's 7-3 in the UFC. Juliana has not fought since July of 2022, so she's on an over 2-year layoff, coming off a unanimous decision loss versus Amanda Nunes as a plus 200 underdog to lose the belt. Before that, Juliana shocked the world, getting a second-round submission win over the women's greatest of all time in Amanda Nunes as a plus 700 underdog, a fight where Pena dragged Nunes into a war and broke her with pressure and volume. Prior to winning the belt, Pena had a nice come-from-behind win versus via third-round submission versus Sarah McMahon as a plus 100 underdog, and before that, she was submitted in the third round by Germaine de Randamie as a plus 140 underdog. I'd say the market has been slightly underestimating Pena of late. She's always dangerous, will fight for your money, and her pace and pressure combined with her opportunistic submission game makes her a very difficult opponent to deal with over 5 rounds. The 2-year plus layoff is definitely a concern, so seeing Pena on the scale is going to be important information for this fight. When it comes to the strength of schedule, Raquel has 18 UFC fights to Juliana's 10. So she's been here for longer. And over that time, Raquel on the aggregate has fought the more experienced brand of UFC competition. The combined records of Rocky's 18 UFC opponents is 136 wins and 102 losses. While for Pena's 10 opponents, it's 69 wins and 35 losses. Pena has fought the UFC competition with the significantly better win-loss ratios compared to Pennington. Their UFC wins match up very well, but the ladies Pena has lost to rates a little bit higher, and they both have lost to Amanda Nunes and Germaine de Randamie. I'd say the strength of schedule is very close. The metrics favor Pena, but the wins are very close. Striking. When this fight is at range, I slightly favor Pennington's ability to win minutes at boxing range. Raquel does such a good job of using her footwork and head movement to slip and rip while in the pocket. Pennington's 68.2% distance striking defense is elite for the division, and she's never been knocked down in 18 UFC fights. Juliana is a pressure and output fighter at distance striking range. She throws with power, drowns you in volume, and relies on her toughness to stay in the pocket while taking one to give one. Raquel will be the technical minute winner at range, in my opinion, while I favor Pena's moment winning ability. Raquel needs to fight smart and not let Juliana drag her into a sloppy war because she's much more technical and defensively responsible at range. She should be able to win the minutes while they are in the center of the cage. When it comes to the grappling, both of these ladies spend at least half of their UFC octagon time in control time positions. Pena prefers to wrestle, and when her fights go to the ground, she's very aggressive looking for submissions from her guard when she's on her back and from top position. Pena uses her BJJ to advance position while landing ground and pound as she patiently looks to get to your back. Juliana will be the one more likely to look for takedowns in this matchup, while Raquel is very comfortable in the clinch. Both ladies have positive clinch and ground strike differentials, but when this fight is on the ground, they're both very dangerous with their submission attempts, as Rocky has 3 UFC wins by submission and Juliana has 2. The difference is Rocky has never been submitted in the UFC, while Pena has been submitted twice. I think these ladies are very well matched in the grappling exchanges, and I could see both ladies winning minutes or moments while there. So Pennington is 1 inch taller. She's got the overall and the UFC experience advantages, and significant ones at that. And she's got the striking advantage, in my opinion. Juliana Pena is 1 year younger. She's got a 2 inch reach advantage. She's been the better finisher as a professional and at the UFC level. And she's also got the power advantage. She's got 2 UFC wins by way of knockout compared to 0 for Raquel Pennington. But Juliana Pena is on a 2+ year layoff. So how she's going to look after that long away from the cage at 35 years old is a bit of a mystery. Now, This should be a really fun fight. Pena always brings aggression. She's scrappy as fuck. She stays in your face. She loves the pressure. She throws lots of volume. She's durable, hits hard, and has a very aggressive submission game. She's a nightmare of an opponent in a 5-round fight because she refuses to fuck off and can find a fight-changing moment with her striking and with her submission grappling game. Now, Pennington is steady and solid. She's on a 6-fight winning streak. Her striking and conditioning have always been on point. Her clinch game is excellent, and she's 3-0 to the submission at the UFC level. Raquel wins minutes with her striking and does not lose minutes on the mat. She's exactly the kind of technical minute winner with good defense who can prevent Pena from winning moments and banking rounds with her superior technical boxing and ability to win minutes in the clinch. The 2-year layoff for Pena is concerning, but her last 2 fights have been against Amanda Nunes. So this is going to be a step down in competition from her last 2 fights for sure. I think both these ladies are very well matched. They are around the same age. They're both very experienced, and they've both fought a tough level of competition at the UFC level. They both have excellent conditioning and are durable, but Pennington sets herself apart with her ability to win minutes at distance striking range. The defense and the footwork are going to make the difference here and allow her to win the minutes of this fight, because I see both ladies having the ability to win minutes and moments in the grappling exchanges. I have to lean with the more active fighter with the better defense, who I think is more likely to win minutes at distance striking range. Pena should be fun to watch in the later rounds, as she has no quit in her, and she always has top-notch conditioning, but I think Rocky wins the minutes and banks the rounds on her way to a decision victory here. So the pick is going to be Rocky Pennington to win this fight by decision, although if Juliana Pena comes back looking good at the age of 35, she's going to be live to win this fight as well. But I think it's a great co-main event. I think it's going to be a really fun fight, but I'm going to go with Pennington to win by decision here. All right, that brings us to the main event of the evening, and it is going to be Alex Poatan Pereira at minus 460 going up against Khalil Rountree, who is a plus 360 underdog. The fight doesn't go to decision, juice to the tits, you guys, at minus 1,200. My word. All right. So what are we going to do here? I mean, kickboxer versus kickboxer. That's what this is. Neither one of these guys even knows how to spell BJJ, although Alex Pereira is a black belt. Take that for what it's worth. But yeah, recent trends. Let's start with Alex Pereira. 37 years old. He's 11-2 as a professional mixed martial artist, and he's 8 wins and 1 loss in the UFC though so far. Alex is the current UFC light heavyweight champion and the former UFC middleweight champion. Alex is currently on a 4-fight winning streak, and his only UFC loss came by knockout against Israel Adesanya at middleweight. Alex is a former Glory kickboxer who has elite stand-up and fight-ending power in his left hook. Alex is coming off a 2nd-round head kick knockout over Jiri Prochaska as a minus 150 favorite. Before that, he won by 1st-round knockout over Jamal Hill as a minus 130 favorite to defend the 205-pound belt that he won in the previous fight versus Jiri Prochaska, where he won by 2nd-round knockout as a minus 125 favorite. Alex made his 205-pound debut versus Jan Blachowicz and won that fight by split decision as a minus 110 pick'em. Alex is on fire right now. He's got 4 wins in a row, and he's undefeated at the light heavyweight division. He's been minus 150, minus 130, minus 125, and minus 110 in his last 4 fights, and he's looked way better than those numbers in his last 3 fights. So the market is very high on him right now, as evidenced by the fact that he's pushing minus 500 against another powerful kickboxer in Khalil Rountree. Keep in mind, Alex Pereira has never been priced as more than a minus 275 favorite, and that was against Andreas Michailidis. So it definitely appears the market is getting a little carried away with the price this time around. Now, Khalil Rountree is 34 years old. He's 13-5 and a no contest as a professional, and he's 9-5 with a no contest in the UFC. Khalil is currently on a 5-fight winning streak, and his last loss was a unanimous decision against Marcin Prachnio in Abu Dhabi as a minus 400 favorite. He shit the bed there. Since the loss to Prachnio, Rountree got a second-round knockout win over Modestas Bukauskas. He was an underdog in that fight to fucking Bukauskas, plus 140. He was a second-round knockout over Carl Roberson as a plus 125 underdog, a split decision win over Dustin Jacoby as a plus 150 underdog, and a first-round knockout win over Chris Daukaus as a minus 175 favorite, and most recently a third-round knockout win over Anthony Smith as a minus 200 favorite. The Prachnio loss made Rountree available at dog odds in his next 3 fights, and since then he's covered and looked good doing it as a favorite twice in a row. Rountree's on a roll going into the biggest fight of his life against a fellow kickboxer in Alex Pereira at Elevation in Salt Lake City this Saturday. So when it comes to the strength of schedule, Khalil is the more experienced fighter at the UFC level with 6 more fights, but it's definitely Alex who's fought the much better level of competition in the UFC. The combined UFC records of Pereira's 9 UFC opponents is 73 wins and 35 losses, while for Rountree, it's 85 wins and 88 losses. In addition, Pereira has been scheduled for 5-round championship fights 5 different times in the UFC, while Rountree has never even fought in a 5-round main event before. And obviously, this will be his first time fighting for gold. So not only has Pereira been in there with the higher level opponents, but he's also fought in higher pressure situations and has been into the championship rounds before. Without question, Pereira's UFC wins twice over Yuri Prochaska, once over a former champion in Jamal Hill, once over a former champion in Jan Blachowicz, a win over a former champion in Israel Adesanya, a win in a former champion over Sean Strickland, and then he's got wins over Bruno Silva and Andreas Mihalidis. Those wins rate way better than Khalil's wins over Anthony Smith, Chris Daukaus, Dustin Jacoby, and I mean, he lost that fight. Carl Roberson, Modestas Bukauskas, phenomenal performance against Eric Anders, Gokhan Saki, and Paul Craig and Daniel Jolly. Both guys are on winning streaks, and both guys are high-level kickboxers with a ton of power, but Pereira has shown those skills against a much higher level of competition than Rountree has. When it comes to the distance striking, both of these guys are high-level kickboxers. Rountree has a ton of power. He's landed 13 UFC knockdowns, and he's only absorbed 1. He's 7-2 to the knockout in the UFC, and he's landing a knockdown on 2.8% of the significant strikes that he lands. Alex is a former Glory kickboxer with a ton of power in his own right. He's 6-1 to the knockout in the UFC, and he's landing a knockdown on 1.3% of the significant strikes that he lands, boasting a 6-1 knockdown ratio. Both of these guys prefer to stand and bang, as the grappling game is both of their weaknesses. Khalil has a Muay Thai style, and he's a southpaw. He has a dangerous straight left hand, a check right hook, and he blasts body kicks from the southpaw stance that have a lot of power. He's shown that he has great leg kicks in his own right, and even though his distance accuracy at 37% and his distance striking differential at negative 0.4 are below average, his power is undeniable, and if he lands on big on you, it could be curtains shortly thereafter. Alex is the guy who is the better minute winner at range. He does a phenomenal job of using his calf kicks, whether his opponent is in the southpaw or in the orthodox stance. He uses the low kicks to slow down the movement of his opponent and the jab to the body to establish range and bring his opponent's guard down. Once he finds the range and he lands a couple of jabs to the body, he starts looking to land the straight right, the head kick, and his nuclear option, which is the dreaded left hook. Alex's left hook is maybe the most powerful weapon in all of MMA. If it lands, it's nighty-night. Keep your butthole tight. Pereira is much more accurate at range than Khalil. 60% accuracy at range for Pereira, 37% accuracy at range for Khalil. And that is a function of his technical superiority at range. Khalil can win minutes too. He's just a little more reliant on the big shot than Pereira is. I think both guys are going to be live to win moments here, but I favor Pereira's technical superiority, the 3-inch reach advantage, the low kicks, and accuracy at range to win the minutes, while each guy looks to find that fight-changing moment with their striking. Grappling, both of these guys are horrible grapplers. I doubt either guy goes to the offensive wrestling here, but if one guy did, I think it would be Pereira. In Pereira and Rountree's 24 combined UFC fights, they've combined for 1 completed takedown and a grand total of 2 attempts. It's kickboxer versus kickboxer, and it would be surprising to see either guy look for takedowns here. Both guys have positive clinch striking differentials, so I think both guys could have success there, but I have to favor the overall grappling game of Pereira, who trains with an MMA grappling legend in Glover Teixeira, and he's a black belt. Alex Pereira, 3 inches taller, 3-inch reach advantage. He's got a lot of 5-round championship experience. He's got the strength to schedule advantage. He's got the technical kickboxing advantage. He's got power, and he's got probably the grappling advantage here. While Rountree's 2.5 years younger, he's got the overall experience and the UFC experience advantage, and he's got a ton of power in his own right, landing a knockdown on 2.9% of the significant strikes that he lands, boasting a 13-to-1 knockdown ratio at the UFC level. But the weaknesses for Rountree are grappling and the lack of 5-round or main event experience. So very interesting UFC 307 main event between 2 high-level kickboxers with a ton of power and limited grappling games. Khalil is on a 5-fight win streak, and Alex has won 4 in a row, but it's very perplexing as to how Khalil got this title shot. There are at least 3 names that are way more deserving than him right now, but none of that matters. The opportunity has presented itself for Khalil, and he has a chance to make history on Saturday. Win this fight and get gold wrapped around his waist. Khalil is 2.5 years younger. He's more experienced overall and at the UFC level, and his power numbers are elite for the light heavyweight division. The biggest hole in his MMA skill set is the grappling, but Alex really doesn't have the ability to take advantage of that, so both fighters should get the fight that they want and were planning for. Alex is 3 inches taller, and he has a 3-inch reach advantage. He has all the 5-round main event and championship experience, the strength to schedule advantage. He's the more technical kickboxer with the superior minute-winning skill set. He also has a ton of power, and he's probably the better grappler. Alex is a big favorite here, and for good reasons, but at the end of the day, this is a kickboxer versus kickboxer fight, and both guys are extremely dangerous at distance striking range. Alex will be the more accurate guy at range, and he uses his leg kicks really well to slow down his opponents and look to land the nuclear left hook. And Khalil carries his right hand low and away from his body because he's a southpaw, and he's always parrying his opponent's jab. So it's probably just a matter of time before Alex lands that left hook. Both guys' distance striking defense is sitting at 53%. Both guys have massive power, and both guys have been finished at high rates in their losses. So my favorite read on this fight is the unders as potential parlay pieces. I think Alex wins the minutes at range and has the better technical skills to find the opening and land the big shot, but this line is way too wide. Alex has never been close to this big of a favorite in the UFC. He's 37 years old, and he's fighting a guy in Rountree that might be the most powerful kickboxer he's seen so far in the UFC. So I feel the Rountree money line side has some value here. The pick is going to be Pereira by KO, maybe second or third round, but I think fight doesn't start round 4 is a good parlay piece, and I see somebody getting violently served in this matchup, and the pick is going to be Alex Poatan Pereira and still to win by KO in round number 3. And we did it. 12 fights broken down, 79 pages of notes read, bringing us to the last order of business of the day. 2 of the last order of businesses of the day. First, we need to find a dog of the week. Pereira's a favorite. Pennington's a favorite. Bautista's a favorite. Harrison's a favorite. Holland's a favorite. Thompson's an underdog. Rodriguez is an underdog. Almeida's a favorite. Hernandez is a favorite. Pennington is a favorite. Spann's a favorite. And Means a favorite. So we've only got 2 choices. And the Bootsy Collins Memorial, Dogs Are Barking pick of the week this week. I think it might even be better than that. But yes, Bootsy Collins Memorial, Dogs Are Barking pick of the week this week is going to be the Marina Rodriguez money line at plus 164. We talked about this fight, and I think it's a big step up in competition for Iasmin. I think Marina Rodriguez is still fighting at an extremely high level. So the fact that she's 37 years old here, it doesn't really bother me. I think Marina's been in there against much better grapplers than Iasmin Lucindo, and she's been able to manage herself pretty well in recent fights in those situations. So hang on just a second. All right. I think I might bet on her this week because I think that this fight's going to be real close. You know, Marina Rodriguez has the advantage at distance striking range, and she's got the advantage in the clinch. She's fought the much better brand of competition. She's more experienced at the UFC level. She's taller and she's longer. So with all those advantages, it being a women's fight and Marina really doing a nice job at distance striking range, as long as she doesn't find those moments where she loses like she did in the Jessica Andrade fight, or if she can get back up when she does get taken down, I think that that's going to be crucial for her success in this fight. But I think the Marina Rodriguez money line at plus 164 is going to be your Uncle Weezy's Bootsy Collins Memorial Dogs Are Barking pick of the week, which brings us to the last order of business of the day, and that is Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. And we got a problem here, you guys. It's a hard week for the ass shaving of the week because there's only 12 fights. And I make it a rule because every time I pick a woman, it goes tits up. So 4 fights, the Carla Esparza fight, the Marina Rodriguez fight, the Kayla Harrison fight, and the Raquel Pennington fight. There's already 4 fights that are gone. So we only have 8 fights to choose from. Alex Pereira is a minus 460 favorite. I can't give you that. Mario Bautista, I'm not picking him to shave the ass of Jose Aldo. Kevin Holland, I'm not picking him to shave the ass of Roman Dolidze. I think he wins that fight by decision, and I think it's probably going to be kind of close. I'm picking Stephen Thompson to win, but he's a big underdog. Women's fight. Cesar Almeida is a pretty good option, but he's minus 450 on some sports books, so you don't really need me to tell you that he's going to win. Alexander Hernandez versus Hubbard, man, I think that fight is very, very close. I'm not picking an ass shaving there. Tecia Torres versus Esparza, women's fight, out the window. Tim Means versus Court McGee is old man versus old man. I think there's probably going to be a finish there, but I'm literally flipping a coin there, so it can't be a confident pick. And then it's Ryan Spann is left, and I just said that I would rather sleep over at Diddy's house than lay juice on Ryan Spann. So now what? What are we going to do? What's the ass shaving of the week? Well, it's got to be the fight that I'm confident about. It's got to be a fight that I think is going to win, and I think the dude is going to win violently here. And I think the market's dead wrong on this one. So I'm giving you a plus 185 underdog for this week's Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. You guys, my fight picks have been, I'm not the kind of guy that breaks my arm, pat myself on the back. I don't go out there on Twitter and talk about all the bets that I won. I put up a little thing every week about the ass shaving of the week, whether it hits or not. You know, I promote the work that I do on my YouTube channel, but I'm not one of these guys out there that when I win a bet, I talk about it on Twitter and I give everybody shit for being on the other side. I don't care about that shit. This is about numbers and this is about putting in the work. And when you put in the work, you can see things very clearly. I feel like the market's making way too many mistakes here. And I think Stephen Thompson, the narratives that of why people say he's going to lose this fight, you know, they don't give you points for being younger at all. Like when you walk into the cage, you don't walk in there up 1 round to nothing because you're younger than the guy. Just because you're younger than the guy, you still have to go in there and beat him. And where are you going to beat him? Are you a wrestler now? A guy with no wrestling background? A guy who didn't wrestle? I mean, he's going to all of a sudden beat a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and Stephen Thompson and just absolutely destroy him on the mat as if he's Bilal Muhammad, as if his name is Gilbert Burns, a 4-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion at the black belt level, as if he's Shavkat Rakhmonov, a 17-0 guy with a 100% finish rate. Dude, Joaquin Buckley is none of those guys, and he's not the better striker. I think Wonder Boy is going to fucking toy with him. And you guys are going to thank me when you cash a plus 185 ticket as Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week this week. That's it. I'm done. Thank you guys for supporting the Patreon. You guys are the reason that I do this work. You guys are the reason that I sit here and I do this shit, which is fucking crazy. 79 pages of fight notes written up for every single fight. Am I doing the research? Am I looking at all the angles? Am I reading it over before I make my pick? You're goddamn right I am. Was I 12 of 14 on my fight picks last week? Yup. Was I 14 out of 14 on my fight picks like a month ago? Yup. Have I been first place on Tapology twice in the last 3 months? Yup. Have I been in the top 20 on Tapology 3 times in the last 3 months? Yup. I'm putting in the work. We're going to make more money. And these new fight write-ups and the new methodology for breaking down fights, we're seeing the board a little bit more clearly. We're going to get a little bit more active with our bets, and we're going to start cashing. We missed on the ass shaving of the week last week. Benoit Saint Denis wasn't able to get it done in front of the home crowd, but this time we're going with a big underdog. We're not going to have to lay juice this week if we're betting on the ass shaving of the week. And I think that Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is going to get the job done. And my guy, Hamilcar Barkas, loves the Thompson pick for the ass shaving of the week. And we got K-Deep saying Kayla Harrison, the coochie shaving of the week. Yeah, she's probably going to go out there and win that one violently, but it's minus 1,200. You guys don't need me to tell you that. Thank you guys for watching. Let's stack cashed tickets like flapjacks for UFC 307. God bless each and every one of you guys, and I will be live tomorrow afternoon for probability for everybody on the $25 tier of the Patreon. We're going to use my betting models and my stylistic read to point out all the plus EV bets on this card so that we can all stack cashed tickets like flapjacks together for UFC 307. Good night, everybody. We will see you guys tomorrow with more Patreon and Dub Club exclusive content for the people who support the work. Good night, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow.